Horn, a legendary sword that has served many powerful masters, has gained its own reputation over time. Whoever wields it becomes a hero of legend, with fortunes changing as the years pass. They soared together through countless battles against various monsters, and when their opponent was a savage white dragon more ferocious than any other creature, no matter how powerful the enemy was, Leonberger, as Horn's sword, never intended to retreat. Heaven rewarded those who persevere, and their relentless efforts led them to successfully defeat the monster, which was no surprise. Leonberger, a true powerhouse, had officially unified the lands and become a founding hero for eternal life, so Horn was entrusted by Leonberger to future generations and others. But in that first moment of waking from a long, unconscious sleep, I found myself completely at the mercy of Prince Adrian Leonberger. Because of my own uselessness, I desperately longed for power, and all Horn wanted was to run away. No matter how much the servants and knights tried to persuade, they couldn't save Horn from Adrian's grasp, and eventually those who play foolish games must pay the price. Within an hour of wielding the sword, disaster struck. Just because he stumbled a little, he lost his chance at the terrifying power of both man and sword here. Speaking of Adrian Leonberger, he is a talentless man with an extremely inflated ego. Everyone believes that if Adrian ascends to the throne, the kingdom will surely fall because of his unpredictable attitude in dealing with others, and he has also successfully gained many enemies. But little did they expect that the future of both Horn and Adrian would change forever when the boy's soul replaced his. However, Gruhol in this human body inherited no memories at all, causing even Adrian's former teacher to look up in awe. As a result, the current ruler of this kingdom, Lionel, was defeated in a battle for forgetting the horrifying past of the old Adrian. Kang's father has a kind mother, Queen Margarita, who possesses a forgiving heart towards him. Or rather, the original Adrian. She loved her child so much that all those flaws disappeared in her eyes with a gentle filter. As a long day comes to an end, Gruhol still cannot escape the feeling of guilt for indirectly causing the death of his own family. But sitting there in sorrow is not the way, so Gruhol decided to live as Adrian and chose to transform his current body. Unfortunately, the issues with this body cannot be solved overnight. No matter how much experience he had, he couldn't gather enough energy to create a mana heart. It wasn't until the moment of utter exhaustion that Adrian was stunned and just as hopeless about the terrible deterioration of his new body. Although Adrian, once Gruhol with a strong mind, couldn't accept his current state, surprisingly he had what was needed to save himself, which was a set prepared by Queen Margarita. Without hesitation, Adrian once again attempted to gather mana into his body, small but powerful, as just one sip advanced his progress even slightly. So, after all the hardships during these days of Lionel's confinement, Adrian managed to create the mana heart as he wished, and only after experiencing the exhilarating feeling in the duel did he fully understand the pain of humanity when forced to push energy around his body. No longer just a sharp sword with a steadfast spirit, yet even as a human, he refused to step back and quickly subdued himself to progress, the first time in his life embracing a power truly his own. Of course, Adrian couldn't help but feel extremely proud and boastful. Life always has its surprises. What is even more admirable than this event is that Adrian received a series of skills from the status window which originally belonged to his time as Gruhol. A fan's upgrade is so perfect that his entire body now resembles a different version of himself, even smaller than the sharpest weapon he once wielded, and alongside receiving a blazing mana heart, Adrian also gains an overwhelming maternal love because he drank all the medicine she prepared, proving his self-care. However, even in this form, Adrian's Gruhol must face the contempt from his uncle Vel and the assurance that he will be beaten for sure. But during the training, Vel's condescending words became so excessive that even a mighty warrior like Adrian grew to hate him with gritted teeth. So, without a doubt, in just a morning encounter, the two of them have already entered a fierce competition lasting 6 months. But it was also during the taunting from Vel that he decided to use the energy he had struggled to accumulate. Next, poor Adrian realizes that the mana heart he painstakingly cultivated is the most useless and inferior thing. The technique he tried to master before now feels like salt in the sea, and Adrian cannot accept it. So, Vel, unafraid, chose to break the rules in an even more extraordinary way, slicing straight through the surrounding spiritual energy around Adrian. The energy layer that he had painstakingly created was completely shattered under the pressure of Ma-Sik. So, Adrian immediately updates his knowledge to keep up with the times. To create Ma-Sik, sorcerers are the ones who use magic circles, and the knights form a sequence of seals to gather mana into the highest realm, creating a chain of men. While exploring and researching, the familiar name Anjengen catches Adrian's eye. It turns out that the one who challenged you to compete for the Holy Sword title was the creator of this Ma-Sik technique. I don't know the outcome of that fight, but judging by the smug smile on Adrian's face right now, you can guess part of it. The next morning, he started the day with a few minutes of light exercise. Vale just entered through the door and immediately made a sharp remark about the opposing team's choice of demon spirit. But Adrian's will remained unshaken, and he stubbornly tried to prove his own strength. His arrogant attitude displeased him, so he straightforwardly mentioned the tragic fate of those with similar personalities to him. Finally, both decided to enter the decisive battle with Vale, promising to become Adrian's guardian if he lost. As soon as it began, Vale quickly warmed up by unleashing a chain of 4 mana bursts, their power so immense it shattered the surrounding earth and rocks. A few faint energy blades quickly cut through the air, slicing into Adrian's flesh and causing blood to flow. The 4 guards present there immediately drew their swords to warn Vale that his actions could endanger the Crown Prince. But the fight continued, and the result was him lying on the ground after being beaten by his opponent's ruthless moves. While resting, Adrian's whole body still trembled from the shock of how brutal his opponent had been. As soon as he returned to his room, he was warmly greeted by the royal physician sent by Margarita. But in the end, he was shoved out the door before he could do anything, because Adrian didn't want his efforts today to be in vain. And this unusual event left Cax surprised by the rebellious prince he once knew, as Adrian was enjoying his meal when the ordeal named Jillian appeared with an irritating smile. Cax quietly leaned in to remind Adrian, and as soon as the identity of the third prince was revealed, his face immediately darkened. Confronted with the fake concern from the other person, Adrian only maintained his disdain for him. Sure enough, rumors spread faster than Wi-Fi. Before long, the news of your defeat to Vio and your search for a rival reached Jillian. He didn't laugh mockingly, but instead seriously declared himself as the next challenger. After a while, Adrian recalled the third prince and couldn't help but feel confused. Who is this? Why does Leon Berger's successor look like that? The patience to recount Jillian's achievements, who at 14 had already created 2 circles. Adrian, still not fully understanding his opponent, was interrupted as the maid handed him a letter. Adrian, feeling annoyed, held each letter in his hand, thinking about the indifferent people behind them. Inside the letter are pleas to become Adrian's opponent, but in reality, they secretly want to fight him to the death. He held the letter in his hand, his mood twisted and hard to describe. Adrian ordered the maid to write down the names of all those who sent the challenge letters. Time passes, and Adrian learns how to hold it. Vio patiently teaches him step by step, including the strictness involved. He yelled so loudly that Adrian wished he could just stay silent, and his personality was quite unpleasant too. But the previous duel had caused Adrian muscle pain. Vio realized this and asked, "You haven't received healing magic?" As an experienced person, Adrian naturally has his own methods. If I received healing magic, I would just revert to my old state and not develop further. Vio didn't say much and returned to the main matter of teaching swordsmanship. It's what the royal knights learn when building their foundation. Every sword stroke is a sharp line. Veo is alone in the world of sword training. His person is extremely cold. Once he takes a weapon in hand, he becomes an assassin without mercy. Veo practices a few moves, forming a whirlwind around himself. Adrian watches in amazement. Are you saying this is the swordsmanship that knights learn when building their foundation? Veo sheathed his sword, then explained about the forging sword technique, which may lack sharpness but is absolutely loyal and suitable. But Adrian really doesn't care about it. What he cares about is the dragon spirit sword, the great sword technique he once witnessed. Now it's considered a mediocre sword technique again. Vio looked at his expression and, feeling anxious, said, "This much is not enough to win. Who can ask their mother to request the master?" Adrian no longer needs to persist in practicing with the dragon sword, which is regarded as a mediocre sword technique. Gradually, he accepts it because it has lost the will to destroy, with those who have abandoned their spirit and forgotten how to wield willpower and the sword. He pats his stomach firmly, telling him to focus his strength there instead of just on his arms and even his legs. His strict discipline makes Adrian endure it all. Adrian's body limped forward, exhausted inside. Even mimicking the fake dragon sword felt clumsy. His mind struggled to recover, determined to prove that the dragon sword was not just an old, useless weapon. A day of training passed, and Adrian patiently followed the instructions. Another week went by, and the dragon sword was still being infused with energy by Adrian. A month later, Adrian received permission. The process was recognized by the system and rewarded him accordingly, and his severe obesity issue was also addressed. His physique transformed after steadily accumulating magic power, and the chaotic, clumsy traits disappeared. Adrian himself also felt that he was swinging his sword more naturally than a month ago. Stronger and more perfect, Adrian's mind had become accustomed to the feeling of training. And then, The sword shattered apart. Veo shouted loudly from behind, but he didn't hear him say to stop. It's raining, and the three of them stand soaked in the downpour, only now realizing Adrian's hand is bleeding, the red streak running down the hilt. Adrian slowly returned to reality. A part of the training wood burned to ashes by lightning. Veo, however, engraved it with a part of his feelings for his nephew. No way I can train in this weather. Adrian raised his bloodied hand to look at it. The bad turned into good, and the system granted him additional focus skills. Adrian's strength was now exhausted, and he fainted in the rain. Veo's face darkened a bit. As a relative, he couldn't help but blame his nephew for this stubborn kid. Adrian slowly wakes up, wondering if he was unconscious, realizing he underestimated the limits of this body. He recalls that when he was a sword, he had achieved all possible accomplishments. The anonymous hero of war, the swordmaster, the mercenary king, the pioneer who led the war to victory and ascension in both body and soul. Soul Reaper, a clever strategist and outstanding mentor, but in the end no one cares about him, just an outsider. That is why Adrian built his confidence through sweat and effort, proud of his own achievements. He felt uneasy living in this fragile body, so he tried to balance his mind and body. Adrian himself has accumulated quite a bit of magic power for the next stage, thanks to his efforts, with the system increasing the amount of magic power in his body. His mental strength also expanded its capacity, allowing Adrian's body to withstand more mana. His body changed as his mental strength expanded, making Adrian incredibly excited. He immediately grabbed a sword in his hand. The system notification displays that you have reached the swordsman level and can now use the most basic aura. Adrian's face is engraved on the sword, and he is satisfied with the magic in his hand. The basics are now within reach. After Adrian regained his health, the training resumed. Veo felt a headache because of the mess Adrian caused earlier. The need to choose a training opponent was pressing. But Adrian had no worries since he already had a target in mind. Veo, as the guide, naturally had the list of opponents ready. Adrian let him arrange them as he pleased before turning to discuss what had happened earlier. The challengers who requested the training match with Adrian were all clearly recorded, and they all held grudges against him from before. So Adrian entrusted Veo to be the referee for the direct training match. A few days later, the training match took place. The challengers, holding their reply letters, eagerly awaited their fight with Adrian. Taylor's deep-seated resentment had begun years ago when Crown Prince Adrian mocked his family. In his eyes, he was determined to erase the shame of his brother and father's defamation from many years past. Taylor enters the training arena, briefly introduces himself to Adrian as an apprentice knight of the Chain Squad. Whether before or now, Adrian still mocks him, saying he's really skilled but looks so weak, once again fueling Taylor's deep-seated hatred, just as rumors say he's rude and arrogant. But now, with Vale beside him, advising Taylor to control his attitude, the match hasn't even started yet. Seeing the idol right in front of him, Taylor couldn't help but feel happy, and kept bowing to him. Adrian was annoyed because Taylor's attitude was completely different when facing him. But Vale reminded him to reconsider his attitude earlier. The match is about to start, and Taylor and Adrian are ready in their positions. On his face, and in his aura, Taylor now had the upper hand. He pounced at Adrian like a hungry tiger first, while Adrian calmly watched all of his opponent's moves. You sneer, too many unnecessary moves. The blocking technique stopped Taylor's attack, forcing him to adjust his stance. That's mental strength. The one who must submit now is Taylor, who was pushed back by Adrian. He held his ground to avoid being thrown too far, but his mental strength couldn't block the demonic energy. The spiritual energy from Adrian radiates out, making Taylor's magic seem like mere sparks. Suddenly, a sound erupts from somewhere, causing everyone to panic, and the sword emits a noise. Could it be the silver sword? The sword that gradually releases demonic energy from Taylor as he desperately strikes at Adrian. The swords of both sides clashed directly, creating a deafening sound and incredible force, forcing both of them to retreat. The magic power and demonic energy clashed, causing a huge explosion. Smoke and dust billowed everywhere, and everyone was left gasping for breath. Adrian broke out in a sweat, recalling what he had heard about magic force and mental strength being two opposing extremes. He found it difficult to use his mental strength to confront it, feeling as if the magic force could turn back at any moment. But looking back at Taylor, I still feel like I'm pretty normal. Just casually fixing the tip of the sword on the opponent, I need to make them lose their mind a bit. Then Adrian closed his eyes, focusing on his senses. Whether he had awakened, the demon sword, or the sword itself, countless other names he had been called. Part of his soul connection. At this moment, the system interface flashed rapidly, receiving the immense will from his heart. Successfully awakened the dormant will of the fake dragon Long, the sword's recent memories of activity. And the name of the heart was forged to slaughter the dragon. the heart of the dragon-slaying sword was activated. Adrian awakened, feeling every breath of the dragon-slaying sword. You grip the sword tightly, your body and breath seem to merge with the dragon. The true power of the dragon-slaying sword is to be unleashed for the purpose of killing dragons. Adrian's current state makes Taylor tremble and not dare to take another step. What the hell is going on? Even Taylor, who is blocking the way, can't stop him. He shouts loudly to stop. And your spirit now is as sharp as a sword, surging fiercely within you. Valet quickly reached a conclusion about Adrian's current state. That sword is very dangerous. He suddenly remembered the conversation between the two not long ago. Did I have a request before starting the match? All seriousness is written across his face. If it looks like I am about to kill my opponent, Valet's right hand slowly clenches around his sword. Then he suddenly rushes forward, his mind echoing with the urgent warning that you must stop him. Valet instantly drew his sword, causing Adrian to be thrown backward. His massive body slammed into the wall, kicking up a cloud of dust that obscured the view. Everything happened so quickly that everyone froze in place. A few seconds later, Cals and the others finally reacted, drawing their swords and charging straight at him. There's no hiding his anger in his voice. The Countess keeps singing, "What does he think he's doing? You could be punished for attacking the royal family." At this moment, Adrian also raises his sword and steps back. I was the one who asked him. Cals couldn't believe it and blurted out, "Your Highness." The prince wiped the blood from his lips, his eyes carrying a hint of resentment. "I did ask for this, but I never said to knock me down to the ground." It's a pity no one listened. Only a look of panic spread when they saw Adrian gradually fall back. "Your Highness?" The blue energy pulses slowly around like a small whirlpool, synchronized with your heartbeat. He placed his hand on the opposite side, both delicately sensing and lightly exclaiming, my mental strength almost shattered. Adrian's mind then flashed with Val's graceful sword-drawing stance. As expected, your power is on a completely different level from a novice using only a basic spell. I took a direct hit. Luckily, it seems there are no lasting after-effects. Thinking of that, he clenched his fist in excitement, finally feeling that everything was settled. I even won the match. At that moment, a deep voice suddenly rang out, startling Adrian. "Why is the prince smiling? You look a bit confused as you gaze at the person before you. Why did you come here?" Valet didn't answer and kept asking persistently. "What exactly is your Highness thinking?" The more he spoke, the more he couldn't suppress the blazing fire in his heart. "And what about that filthy, corrupt sword? I never taught you such techniques." Even under strict questioning, Adrian calmly replied, "I am just acting according to the true nature of the blade." Valet pouted and turned away dismissively, the true nature of the sword, spoken by someone who has never experienced real combat. In an instant, Song calmly analyzed the situation rationally and fairly. So the true nature of the sword you mentioned is actually sharp, brutal, and unsettling. But it remains a truth among countless other truths. Adrian couldn't help but glance over. "Surprisingly, I thought you would start preaching about the way of the sword being about perfecting the blade or something like that." Valet's mouth twitched slightly before he confidently declared, "I am not a knight-errant, I am a soldier. I do not walk the path of righteousness, but the path to victory." Adrian merely raised an eyebrow slightly and listened silently as he continued, "But your sword is too much. When the swelling blood vessel becomes too enlarged, it will blind both you and your target. You turn your face away and sigh, your voice also becoming hoarse. And that's why we dampen it like this to fix that flaw, right?" Valet crossed his arms and looked serious. "I will watch to see if the demon inside will swallow you whole." After 3 days of continuous training, Taylor's sword once again fell heavily to the ground. Only then did Adrian look at him seriously and call out, Taylor, right? You have tried very hard over the past 3 days. His effort throughout has been fully reflected in your eyes, enduring a deadly sword without restraint for 3 days straight. You must have suffered a lot, huh?" Hearing that, Adrian sighed softly and said with a playful tone, "It's a pity. I guess you wanted to give me a final blow before it's over, but you couldn't do it." A bead of sweat immediately rolled down Taylor's face as he stammered in denial. "No, that's not it. You're not too concerned, just raising your voice to give orders behind. Give it to me." He looked at the sword in Serene's hand with confusion. "Your Highness, this is it." Adrian's face is filled with sincerity. "I heard that I did something unforgivable before. I wonder if this can make up for it. But bring this to the male lead, the him, for me. Nothing fancy. It's just a teddy bear and a letter." You decisively turn away, leaving only a gentle farewell behind. "Go now, and may your journey be safe." Adrian gazes quietly at the red hue in the sky. I have no obligation to clean up the mess caused by that crazy prince. But still, when you ask someone to do a job, you should pay them properly. Just then, Taylor responded loudly and shouted, "Thank you, Your Highness." The training matches of the Mad Prince have become the hottest topic in the kingdom. Almost everyone is delighted to see him get into trouble. Han's arrogance will finally bury itself. The prince's platform will pay a heavy price for past sins. I don't know how embarrassed Han will be, but as the days go by, the scandal everyone expected still hasn't happened. When Taylor asked, "So what was the result of the match?" everyone who came to challenge Adrian clenched their fists. She answered with shining bright eyes, "So it seems that due to a misunderstanding, Prince Dai is not as terrible as the rumors say. We both fought with all our might. That's all there is to it, threats or not. No, I just understood Din Ha's true intentions." The others, hearing that, looked more and more stunned, and an idea suddenly appeared in their minds. What the heck, the palace must have silenced them. But when Adrian heard that news, he thought differently, silencing "Don't mess up. He was just embarrassed about losing to me." He whispered maliciously, "The noblemen are truly useless. Why not try to do something at least once?" Vale stands with arms crossed behind, coldly pouring a bucket of cold water, saying, "That sounds nice." But then, something makes Adrian turn his head sharply and stare fixedly at Kaelin. You step forward, place your hand on his shoulder, and smile threateningly. "Next time you go out, remember to boast about your victory." "Is that clear?" Kaelin shivered in fear, startled, and shouted loudly, "Yes, Mistress Din Ha." Watching the opponent's figure disappear into the distance, Adrian trusted and slightly smiled, believing the rumors would soon die down. Glancing at Adrian with regret, the rumors said that Din Ha had threatened everyone to achieve the match's outcome. He was so affected by this blow that he hung his head and remained silent. After a long while, Adrian finally picked up his sword again. Pieces of the argument come apart. Fine. Whatever, I'll just keep practicing. He seems to vent his frustration by swinging his sword. Then Adrian quickly pulls back. You swiftly turn your body while gathering energy. Then Adrian's broad back slightly bends as he strikes down with full force. The sword enveloped in energy easily cuts through the air, and with each movement, the flow of power within Adrian's body becomes smoother and more harmonious. Now that the moment has come, he finally feels ready but still asks, how many more sparring opponents are left today? Chaos, he opens the paper in his hand and scans the rules. Today's visitor is the last one, Sir Din Ha. Adrian stood upright, his chest slowly steadying as he took deep breaths. "So the apprentices no longer challenge me." Chaos nodded, still staring intently at the documents in his hand, but at least the final opponent is truly a knight. Someone who not only trains in her family's martial arts, but also joins a knight order to sharpen her swordsmanship. Adrian takes the paper, and a look of interest immediately appears on his face. A trainee knight of the Iron Lion Legion, Awen Kurgain. Meanwhile, outside the Forbidden Palace, she slowly walked in wearing a white armor. Two soldiers silently discussed as they watched Awen's back. Is it her? Based on the badge on her armor, it definitely is. Their minds simultaneously conjured images of delicate beauty. A flower on a cliff, a thorny rose, a woman said to have shattered every man's heart. The sound of metal clashing rang out with each of her steps like a lively tune. The two soldiers couldn't help but glance at each other and nod in admiration. As expected, she's truly beautiful. I didn't think even a woman like her would come in here on her own. The more I listen to you two, the more amazed I am. The Crown Prince really does have incredible charm. But then one of them suddenly became happy. After all, it would be very funny if the prince lost to her in front of everyone. The Iron Lion Knights are famous throughout the kingdom for their talent and reputation. Ah Wen is talented, a trainee knight of the group, highly regarded, and soon to become a full member. Adrian's face darkened at this, wondering why someone as talented as her would want to compete with me. Cash, feeling embarrassed, clasped his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. Oh, there was a small misunderstanding between His Highness and Ah Wen before, and he immediately understood after the boy explained. What misunderstanding could there be? With my personality, I definitely caused trouble first. Then I looked up at Adelia and asked loudly, "Hey, you there? Tell me. What did I do back then?" She lowered her head, hesitating for a long time without speaking. "Your Highness?" Adelia took a deep breath, summoned her courage, and quickly said, "Yes, indeed, Ah Wen." At first surprised, Adrian immediately clenched his straw hat and growled, "This crazy fool." That day, while Ah Wen was walking, suddenly a fat hand was placed on her shoulder. Then came Adrian's oily voice from behind, calling her Ah Wen. "Indeed, she is as beautiful as rumored. Tell me, if you wish, you could become my personal lady-in-waiting." She hadn't even finished speaking when he was coldly pushed away by her. As Ah Wen's cold voice rang out, Adrian's face immediately filled with fury. "Your Highness, the knight is not your personal property." He acted impulsively and took everything without even considering that fool. From then on, Adrian couldn't bear to think about it anymore. That's what I heard from the servant. like the crude flirtation of a drunken servant. How could anyone look at her and call her shallowly? Just then, Ah Wen stepped forward, bowing deeply. It's been a long time since we last met. Your Highness, you haven't changed a bit. I don't think so. I've changed a lot inside. I'm adding silently in my heart. She's almost like a completely new person. Seeing her furrowed brows, Adrian sighed softly. This is his fate. Just then, Adelia's voice broke the awkward silence between them. Lady Lohat had arrived, and upon seeing Ah Wen's face, she was stunned and stopped in her tracks. Who is she? She turned to kneel, placing her hand on her chest as a sign of respect. Ah Wen, your humble servant. Squire of the Iron Lion Knights, greetings, Lady Countess. He quickly understood what was happening, scolding Adrian while quietly warning him to be careful. The prince's swordsmanship is very ruthless. You can't help but grind your teeth in frustration. Hey, don't pretend to be neutral, but Valet tilted his head and completely ignored. Fine. He stepped out onto the high and wide arena and shouted loudly. Both of them took their positions. From this moment on, the match begins. As soon as the words finished, Ah Wen immediately sat down and clenched his sword by his side. Adrian also instantly assumed a defensive stance to see if the Iron Lion seed had any special qualities. On the other side, she drew her sword and charged forward. He watched Ah Wen's trajectory with a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Not a bad move at all. Immediately afterward, the two swords clashed, flashing with blinding light. Despite holding firm, the aftershock from the attack caused a streak of blood to run from Adrian's mouth as his mana reversed its flow. Adrian stared in shock at Ah Wen's terrifying face as the two swords clashed with a screech, from now on losing all control and only able to awkwardly dodge each strike. A bead of sweat has unconsciously formed on both sides of my temples. I am completely caught up in her attack. This is not good. Seeing the opponent jump up to deliver a decisive strike, Adrian could only use his last trump card, the Heart of the Dragon, which had been activated. Immediately, Ah Wen realized something was off, seeing that he, who had just been struggling to dodge, was now able to block her fatal strike. Ah Wen also didn't want to fight and chose to retreat to observe more carefully. Her new form is as light as a swallow, quickly creating a safe distance. While observing Ah Wen, the old acquaintance takes this opportunity to adjust her breathing and recover some stamina with that sword. Although looking a bit flustered now, Adrian still couldn't resist taunting. Not all sword traps are the same. She is much stronger than ordinary ones. As he slowly muttered two words, the yellow system panel quickly appeared, and the power of judgment operated at a limited level. After finishing this message, a series of stats about Ah Wen, the jealous girl, will appear, including her gender as a trainee knight, along with her tactics and other qualities. Adrian quickly read through and spat out a mouthful of blood from his throat before the corner of his mouth curled into a slight smile. Knowing this information, despite the limited power, means she is weaker or on par with me. With this conclusion, Adrian becomes even more confident and charges forward again without hesitation. He couldn't hide his excitement and growled loudly. Now the real fight begins. After some time, Adrian's whole body was covered in dirt, gasping for breath. Ah Wen isn't much better, covered in cuts and bruises all over his body, but under the evening sun, neither of them would let go of their sword and admit defeat. Finally, Vale had no choice but to step forward and declare firmly, "Enough for today, I will continue tomorrow." Adrian raised his sore arm and rushed forward, sweat on his face. I was just about to end it too. Ah Wen, trembling, held his sword upright, standing firm. What a coincidence. I thought the same. The words just now made both of them look back at each other, sparks flying between them. So what now? Do you want to continue fighting? If you wish, I am ready. Vale couldn't hold back anymore and shouted loudly enough. Enough. It's getting dark, so they hurriedly bandaged each other. Faken had been waiting for a long time and quickly approached, speaking softly. "Your Highness, let me treat your wounds." Looking at Adrian's wound, he couldn't help but think to himself, "Oh my God, this place is also bruised." Kauhit glanced back briefly towards Ah Wen standing nearby, as if sensing something, and also looked with the corner of her eye. Our eyes just met, and both sides simultaneously turned away with a sigh. Every step Adrian takes is heavy, as if to show his determination. I will not. And so, the two sides continued their duel until the sun disappeared below the horizon, with no one claiming victory. Eldrick turned back to confirm with his companions. It's been 3 days already. Dervin's face couldn't hide his excitement. To be honest, I was quite surprised. He looked away, a bit embarrassed, and admitted that I am not inferior. Hopefully, today will bring a result. Just at this moment, Adrian suddenly spoke up in the middle of the arena. "Before continuing the fight, I have something to say." Agwin hesitated for a moment before sharing his guess. Don't tell me he's too embarrassed to apologize. She firmly insists she won't accept it no matter what. Adrian keeps fidgeting internally, I understand. You want to use victory to prove yourself, but quickly shakes his head to dismiss Agwin's guess. Oh, that's not it. Adrian looked straight ahead and slowly said each word. Since we've fought so fiercely, shouldn't there be a reward? The loser has to do whatever the winner demands, whether it's kneeling or not. Agwin's eyebrows twitched in surprise, but he still stood there silently without replying. On the contrary, it was the eldritch people who protested first. Your Highness, they are members of the royal family. Why would you say that? Please take back your words. After everything, Adrian simply dismissed it with a single word. Outsiders? Don't interfere. Why are there so many spectators? After subduing the knights, he turned to ask again, What do you think? Agwin, she respectfully lowered her sword in front of her. Even though I am just a humble squire, I am still a member of the Knight Order loyal to the Leonberger royal family. I dare not offend His Highness with such disrespect. However, if that is what His Highness permits, perhaps I also have the right to claim my prize from the bet. The opponent is ready to fight, and Adrian also grips his sword tightly, channeling his power, thinking carefully. Don't break your promise later. As soon as he landed, he immediately swung his sword. Agwin dodged to the back and then retaliated with a strike. Adrian leapt into the air with a running start, his eyes now completely transformed into a demonic red, and immediately afterward, he fiercely swung a strike directly at her. As the two swords clashed, Agwin realized something was off. Too fast. It wasn't like this yesterday. Could it be that he has been hiding his true strength? Unlike the first day of the competition, this time Adrian is the one chasing and attacking. Facing the powerful attack, her right shoulder was quickly struck with a sharp pain. The two stood facing each other, and the situation was extremely tense. Agwin opened her mouth to gasp for breath, her eyes scrutinizing every move of her opponent, but Adrian's rushing speed still left her no time to react. Seeing the scent of the sword right in front of her, Agwin could only raise her sword to block, hoping for a glimmer of hope. The two swords clashed with a sharp sound that shattered the quiet space. One of the swords, like a boomerang, was knocked outwards. The remaining glow reflected off Adrian's perfectly upright jade sword's back. The group of cows watching the outcome were all stunned, eyes wide open and mouths agape. Even the valet couldn't hide his surprise in the corner of his eye. But the one most shocked right now is none other than Agwin, kneeling on the ground. No way. Adrian slowly walks over, stops in front of her, and says in a calm voice, I've won completely. You stand opposite the sun, your lips softly pronouncing the familiar name. Agwin calls out Gayan. 1. Adrian paused briefly, his arrogant gaze looking down from above. Then he continued with a smile, wanting someone. The position of personal guard for the Crown Prince, a title that the entire kingdom fears, is quite different from Kars's worries. This job isn't too difficult. He couldn't help but recall the first conversation when they met. Are you the new royal guard? Yes, I am honored to serve you, Your Highness. Adrian only sighed and massaged his forehead. All right, I will rely on you. At that moment, Kars silently thought to himself, the prince seems a bit arrogant. But he is not as violent as the rumors suggest, and even now, seeing you running drenched in sweat, he remains undeterred. He had to reconsider his opinion deep down. No, in fact, it was completely the opposite of the rumors. Memories flood back in Kars's mind of that rainy evening training session. As he gazed absent-mindedly at the chubby figure's back, ignoring Eldritch's frantic shouts. It's too noisy. Should we stop the prince? In the end, even Kars couldn't help but feel worried. Your Highness. Please be careful. Before he could finish speaking, a lightning bolt struck the wooden post in front of Adrian fiercely, but he paid no attention, his entire mind still focused on the sword in his hand. Suddenly a drop of water slid down his cheek, unsure if it was rain or tears. At this point, he could be certain. I have a feeling that he will become a great figure. That is what I believed in. But Adrian's words were like a cold splash of water that completely woke Kars up. I want someone. The two Eldritch simultaneously gasp in fear, covering their mouths. Huh? Really? It's truly shameful. His eyebrows furrowed deeply as he stared fiercely ahead. Could I have misjudged him? Meanwhile, Awen bit her lip tightly and slowly stood up. Could it be? Is that really what Your Highness desires? Faced with her questioning, Adrian's expression remained completely calm. Of course, with your current abilities, you're just an ordinary trainee knight, not even capable of defeating a prince. At this point, he slightly bows his head, hiding his expression, and slowly speaks out. So, what I need is the potential and future of the knight named Aunkurgan. Adrian's gaze now turned cold and ruthless. I want a knight to follow me. Not a knight obeying the royal family to protect me, but a knight who belongs solely to me and follows what I see. Adrian then glanced at the basic evaluation chart with a yellow background, assessing talent, swordsmanship A, archery B, combat B, mana sensing, traits, genius swordsmanship, competitiveness, a soft heart, and a pure soul. He sighed and honestly admitted that someone with a talent for swordsmanship is commendable. Adrian once again looked ahead, this time with eyes filled with sincerity. So, Awen Kurgayan, you must firmly say each word. Become my knight. She achieved her dream of becoming a knight, but there are always many rumors around her. That girl is favored, as the rumors say. She has an outstanding appearance. It's clear that no one sees Awen as a true knight, so she tried twice as hard as others, fighting opponents she couldn't even stand up against each time. Every time she heard the referee's loud call, the winner, Awen Kurgayan. But even after defeating all other contenders with her strength and speed far ahead and showing outstanding performance, the whispers and gossip still surrounded her. Wasn't Awen our shining example? Being protected by a beauty like Awen is an honor for a knight, and my trust in her was almost completely shattered at that moment. I couldn't become a true knight, but faced with Adrian's sincere invitation, Awen's whole body trembled. She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, slowly lifted her head, and looked directly into his blue eyes. He wants to see my potential in the future as a knight. Does he truly mean it? After a long moment of hesitation, Awen finally raised her voice and asked him to promise her one thing: to treat her with respect, not as a woman, but as a knight. If you can do that, I will obey every command from the underworld. Adrian did not answer immediately, but continued to stare at the opponent as if to confirm. Awen did not step back either, her eyes burning with determination as her answer. At this moment, he finally chuckled happily. All right, I promise. As soon as the words left his mouth, she immediately stepped back without hesitation. Then Awen knelt on one knee with the utmost respect. Meeting his focused gaze, she slowly shouted her oath aloud. My lord? Awen, the eldest daughter of the Kurgan family, swears loyalty to Prince Adrian Leonberger and offers her sword and her remaining life to the land, and Lei watches this scene, standing silently beside no one. At this moment, as the ceremony reaches the part where you raise your sword to take the oath, in your capacity as the legitimate heir of Leonberger, in the name of Adrian Leonberger, I bestow upon you the knighthood. You gently place the sword on Awen's broad shoulders with a serious and respectful demeanor. Before the last rays of the long day faded, Adrian uttered her final words and pledged her loyalty. Since that day, she has dedicated herself more seriously to sword training, and of course, the noise of gossip constantly surrounds her. Swearing loyalty to that scoundrel is really unreasonable, isn't it? And it's based on a shady deal. We must cancel it at all costs, but I heard she refused our help. As soon as these words were spoken, countless malicious suspicions immediately arose. Oh my, from what I know, isn't there something shady going on? Could there be a secret relationship with the prince? Maybe he's too afraid of scandal to admit her publicly, so he hides it behind a knight's oath. It was suspicious from the very beginning. Why would she participate in a shady fight organized by that scoundrel? Hearing these rumors, Adrian was once again so furious he ruffled his hair in frustration, going crazy. What kind of villain am I? I am truly the worst scoundrel in the world, aren't I? Chaos looked at you, his eyes filled with unspoken emotions, and finally he gathered all his courage to speak. Your Highness, I don't need anyone. Raising someone isn't interesting at all, Chaos. His eyes slightly widened. Then he suddenly burst into a big smile. Is that so? I'm not joking, I'm serious. He quickly picked up a letter and read it carefully as Adrian Leonberger, the eldest prince of the Leonberger family, was released from his confinement and ordered to attend the upcoming royal banquet. After double-checking, I still find it hard to understand why I did something wrong, he said. Adrian ran his hand through his hair and gently stroked it, never expecting them to end the detention order 6 weeks earlier than planned. In his mind, he remembered Lionel's angry face that day. After behaving like that, they planned to lock me forever in the prince's palace and never see me again. Finally, Adrian could only shake his head and sigh. I really can't understand that man's thoughts. Chaos, standing nearby, couldn't help but ask aloud, Isn't the prince happy to be free again? I sluggishly nodded. I have no interest in this. Even if I leave the palace, I don't know where to go. I have no one to meet because I have never made any connections. At that moment, Adelia was tidying up her belongings when she suddenly let out a startled cry. Seeing both Adrian and the other person turn to look, she quickly bowed her head in apology, saying, Your Highness, I beg your forgiveness. I just saw the invitation sent specifically to Your Highness. You seem a bit suspicious. You ask back. An invitation card. Adelia respectfully hands over the silver-white card. Yes, this is it. Adrian quietly muttered to himself as he opened the silver-edged invitation. a special gathering for young aristocrats. She nearby reminded him that it was a social event the prince had attended before. You just heard that, and immediately turned around to ask, "Me?" Adrian clenched the invitation card in his hand, his voice also becoming more hesitant. "Is that a strange place?" Adelia hesitated and changed her approach, choosing the most submissive way to speak. For a goddess-like woman, the refined pleasures of noble young men are hard to understand. But that was enough to make him breathe a small sigh of relief. "Oh, so it's just a place for drinking and women." Adrian immediately recalled the invitation in his hand. "Forget it. I've been busy enough with training. There's no need to waste time on such meaningless gatherings." As he finished speaking, his downward gaze suddenly seemed to collide with something. All he saw was a piece of paper with sincere words sent to Prince Adrian, intelligent, brave, and profound, from his eternal friend, Bernardo of the Illy family. He instinctively repeated the last word. Ellie. Adrian quickly recalled related memories from his mind. The name sounds somewhat familiar. According to my step-uncle, they are a family that once persistently pursued the mana heart to the very end, and ultimately fell into decline a century ago. He hesitated for a moment, then finally decided to change his initial plan. Maybe I should go and see for myself. Adelia immediately understood the message from behind. "I understand. I will prepare the attire for you." Adrian held the letter in his hand, his gaze distant, hoping that the family still hadn't completely faded away after taking over the body of the first prince and beginning his weight loss journey. It's been 4 months, and now Adrian is being warmly welcomed by Hadric. "Your Highness, are you satisfied with this outfit?" The deity has followed all of your instructions. The main color is black with a minimalist design and elegant lines. Nevertheless, your Highness's noble aura remains unchanged. Adrian placed his hands on his hips, examining himself in the mirror, and I have indeed lost a significant amount of weight. Hadric also followed, clutching his hands tightly with emotion. His body had shrunk by more than half. His eyes immediately shot with admiration and excitement. "I will personally take charge of making your royal ball gown, so I kindly ask for your permission to start right away." But Hadric hadn't finished speaking when the boy called out to him unexpectedly, "Wait a little longer. By then my measurements will definitely be different." A few days after the house arrest was lifted, Adrian was on his way to that particularly annoying young aristocratic gathering. Chaos rides outside the carriage, constantly looking around cautiously while you are so bored that you keep yawning endlessly. Being a prince is truly a tiring position. Clothing, the carriage, the guards, all make me feel suffocated and uncomfortable. Suddenly, Adrian's darting eyes suddenly become more focused, his gaze fixed directly on Adelia sitting opposite him. "You." Adrian's voice, already hoarse from a yawn, became even raspier. "That scar is from the head." She anxiously pulled her wide sleeves tighter, a sign of the god's incompetence. "Princess, that is a punishment fitting for the mistake you blamed the god for." Your mind immediately replayed familiar words from Adrian's past. "This sword now belongs to me." "But you're quite cute too, country bumpkin. The more I think about it, the tighter I grip your hand, and your body trembles with each shiver. Once again, why does learning more about this body's past reveal such terrible stories?" Adrian looked at Adelia again, and thinking back, I've been with this maid for months without even knowing her name. "So you crossed your arms and legs, pretending to be casual, and asked, 'What is your name?'" Although a bit surprised, she didn't dare to delay and replied, "I am Adelia Byron, lady of the court." Adrian was immediately taken aback upon hearing that. "Byron, I never expected to hear that name in a place like this." Your teacher stroked his chin in thought, and she quickly added, "That is a nearly unknown noble family among the aristocracy. In ancient times, before cities even existed, let alone kingdoms among the many races on the continent, it was an era when the weak were exploited and slaughtered as a matter of course. There are those who ended that painful history. When the Great War ended, the saviors rose to lead humanity to dominance. Being honored as one of the 5 great heroes, Adrian clearly appears in his flowing red robe fluttering in the wind. Have you ever thought about this? What you and I will do after the war ends. As soon as the words leave her mouth, Agnes's eyes immediately fill with fierce intent and icy resolve. She immediately gathered her strength and leapt into the air, gripping her sword tightly and charging fearlessly at the enemies. Agnes is the one who held Ida's past, the giant, and ended the long era of slavery. She is the ancestor of countless races that came after. Known as the Blood Sacrifice Sword Lord, Agnes soars through the air. Although she is now struggling after a fierce battle, the surrounding giant creatures dare not act recklessly. "You miserable fool." Agnes turned her head around, her eyes once again blazing with a fierce golden glow. She charged forward to take down each enemy one by one. her mouth still muttering curses. Did they really think running away would earn them a meal? All they care about are trivial things. With that body like a lump of gold, you fools. You only do disgusting things. The useless gold knows how to walk, so you're treated like trash. Leon stammered as the words spilled out, causing even Adrian's sword to sweat, and instinctively covered his ears, feeling nothing but shame, just thinking about it. Anyway, your family's kindness. I wonder what happened to them. While Adrian was lost in thought, a golden voice sounded, "Your Highness, we have arrived." Seeing that you remained seated motionless, Kars repeated, "Your Highness." Adrian immediately regained his composure and stepped down from the carriage just in time. His tall, straight legs quickened forward, but they hadn't gone far when Adrian suddenly turned back, pointed, and said, "Adelia, let's talk later." Without saying a word, he hurriedly moved forward, leaving Kars two behind, both looking at each other in confusion. As he entered, Bernardo eagerly ran out to greet him. "Your Highness." "Are you well?" Prince Adrian Leonberger, Bernardo of the Illy family, greets you. Without waiting for your response, he steps closer to express his feelings, and I can't help but feel joy seeing your safe return and Bernardo's mischievous smile. Adrian couldn't help but feel suspicious. Is this guy really from the Illy family? He looks like an idiot. Despite the heartfelt words echoing in his ears, he quickly glanced at the newly displayed system panel. You must have gone through many hardships to become so thin. As soon as he finished reading, Adrian couldn't help but chuckle softly. Bernardo looked confused and turned to look at the prince. Is something wrong? You are not feeling well, Your Highness. Your face looks a bit pale, but you shake your head happily. No, it's nothing. I just think I'm lucky to have come here. Adrian said this, then gently patted his shoulder. Today will be full of interesting things. Bernardo unconsciously touched the spot that was just touched, his face full of confusion. As soon as he entered the room, Adrian heard a lewd conversation, and then that girl leaned her shoulder up, shameless as ever. After saying that, he slowly approached another girl and gently stroked her back. She has really smooth skin. She pretended to be shy and begged him not to tease her anymore, saying she was about to climax. Ignoring the chaos around them, Adrian and Bernardo still sit on the sofa. Their hands rest on their thighs, unconsciously clenched, and they glance at each other with a strange look. Usually this scum would have already gone around flirting everywhere, but his true nature is completely different. Suddenly, a man stood up. Kaydan drunkenly slurs loudly. Your Highness, I hear you've plucked the Iron Lion flower. The rumor is spreading everywhere. Adrian didn't answer, only tilted his head slightly, waiting for the next words. But before Kaydan could speak, the people around quickly started talking noisily. I wasn't slow either. I've been paying attention to her for a long time. If I had known earlier, I would have gotten her vow first. Does anyone in your family have siblings? Kaydan looked confused, not understanding what this meant, yes. But he still honestly replied, Have you forgotten already? The god has a younger brother, and as soon as the words fell, he immediately let out a breath of relief, feeling truly at ease. While Kaydan was still dazed, Adrian's fist quickly shot forward. What is going on? He hadn't finished speaking when the person on the left felt a sharp pain and collapsed backward due to loss of balance. Thrown to the ground in panic, shattered into two pieces, the sound like a pause button, causing everyone around to freeze in shock. Among them is Bernardo, full of schemes in his mind. On the other side, Adrian's lips slowly curved into a faint smile, feeling relieved that your lineage will not be wiped out. Following the final sound, he decisively struck Kaydan's groin. A piercing scream immediately erupted, shattering the silence around. From above, Adrian looked down with cold blue pupils that held no trace of warmth. From now on, your younger brother will be the heir. Adrian clenched his fist, veins bulging as all his strength concentrated in one point, then delivered a straight punch to Kaydan's face, so powerful it distorted his features. The terrifying scene left the guests in the hall stunned and speechless. Even Bernardo couldn't hide his shocked expression. Not stopping there, Adrian continued to roughly grab the opponent's collar. Just as he saw the second fist about to strike, Kaydan shouted in surprise, Why would you dare to act like this, Lord Din Ha? In the tense and thick atmosphere, he softly spoke with a cold and commanding tone. Listen carefully. I can accept being seen as your subordinate, but I cannot accept the way you treat me like a slave. That statement made the entire hall freeze. Whispers of doubt started to spread. What is he implying? Amidst the shock, Kaydan struggled to ask, but the response was only Adrian's fury and a punch. You need to take another hit. That caused the witnesses to tremble in fear from afar, while Kaydan was now sprawled on the ground, his face swollen and deformed. At that moment, Adrian softly called out with a cold, commanding tone, Eli. Bernardo immediately knelt down when his name was called, stammering, Yes, Your Majesty. As he looked down at the opponent with a divine gaze, he also responded, "Didn't I tell you earlier? Today looks like it will be very lively." Hearing that, he furrowed his brow, a wave of horror rising in his heart, wondering why this madman was acting so unpredictably. Just then, Adrian issued an unchangeable and commanding order to quickly summon the royal knights here immediately. Not daring to delay even a second, Bernardo hurriedly rushed forward like a lost soul. "Yes, I obey the order." The entire hall immediately fell into a deep silence, the space thick with tension. Then he quietly glanced back without emotion and said, "If you run away now, he will stubbornly stand in your way." However, he quickly stepped forward to stop them. "I am speaking to the girls. If you want to leave, go ahead, but if you choose to go, you will have to leave as women." The threatening words full of hidden meaning and Adrian's brutal actions earlier left everyone in fear. He slowly moved forward, but each step was incredibly heavy. "In the hall, I am Fanfac," Adrian calmly and eerily questions. "None of you know the proper etiquette before the prince, nor do you show any respect. Every word you utter carries a weight of 1,000 pounds in hidden fury. You openly mock me and insult my knights." Adrian slowly steps forward, not bothering to face anyone directly. In this situation, what charges could be brought against him? As soon as he finished speaking, the main door gently swung open, and Chaos's steely voice rang out, for they had disrespected the king, which was an act of treason. His appearance was like a spark that ignited the last flicker of courage among the onlookers. Chaos continued with a cold and commanding tone, his warning unmistakable. Moreover, since they dared to challenge the royal authority, it is considered treason. "Please, Your Highness, order us. Who should we make kneel?" Faced with the collapsing prospects of the arrogant, Adrian softly smirked. His cold voice rang out, sealing the fate of each and every one of them. In the imperial palace, Lane couldn't hide her raging fury as she loudly scolded, "You just escaped house arrest and caused a major incident. 14 noble children have been captured, charged with treason and rebellion, and you have accused them of the worst crimes possible. Do you understand what you've done?" Leonin clenched his jaw tightly, his brows furrowing with worry as he thought about the difficult situation. "Because you have used the royal reputation, they must impose the appropriate punishment, but with the 14 related families, I cannot ignore the wave of opposition." Adrian chuckled with a hidden mockery. Is the regent worried about the rebellion? They are just trash used and discarded within their own family, useless and only tarnishing the family's honor if they still exist. Then he shrugged casually as if it was nothing. Before the sudden proposal, Leonin asked back with suspicion, "Who is it for?" And Adrian responded without hesitation. The crown prince asked calmly, already knowing the answer, "Isn't it true that each family has someone skilled at calming public opinion? So where did you go wrong with the captured siblings?" Hearing those words, Lionel had nothing left to say and only knew how to coldly order him to step back. Adrian immediately responded concisely, obeying the command. But then a rebellious thought crossed his mind. See, there's nothing to justify, right? Leaving the emperor's presence, Adrian regained his calm smile, gently reassuring, "Don't be so tense. I won't hurt you." Faced with such gentle treatment, Adelia couldn't hold back her fear and trembled. "Your Highness, what fault has this humble servant committed?" Seeing her reaction, he paused in surprise and then quietly thought, "This loyal servant must have been mistreated by her quite a lot." Adrian then began to observe and secretly evaluate the opponent, a family that was hard to be recognized as nobility. Even their direct descendants knew nothing about gratitude. Adrian's thoughts gradually carried a hint of regret as the glorious history had been erased. He seemed somewhat disappointed by the reality, as unmatched secrets were also lost. The more he pondered, the more his brows furrowed, unable to hold back his admiration and exclaiming in awe that all the fame and reputation had vanished without a trace. But my thoughts suddenly turned to shock as I looked at what was in front of me, the stone statue. Why are all these traits so strange? Thoughts swirled in Adrian's mind as he recalled the traits. An insane butcher driven mad by blood, a berserker thirsting for battle, yet also a fragile heart easily moved, a caring soul attentive to others, and a submissive, passive personality. The extreme contradiction forced Adrian to catch Tai Duong in surprise. She possesses top-tier abilities but lacks the trait to control her madness. Is it safe to release this monster outside? In the quiet space, both of them fall into their own separate silence. Adrian's thoughts kept swirling around vague calculations. I have to try. After all, it's an S-rank talent. Maybe there's still a trait I can exploit. A slave, whose innate trait is feeling happiness when serving a master, so the decision is made, he breaks the silence with a firm command. Adelia, pledge your loyalty to me. Faced with such a sudden demand, Adelia couldn't hide her surprise and asked back, What do you mean, Your Highness? Without giving the other time to regain composure, Udrian maintained his commanding tone and firmly repeated, I command you to become my knight, right here, right now. Startled by such a great favor, she hurriedly knelt on the floor, bowing her head and said, Your Highness, this is not something a humble servant like me dares to ask. However, you still maintain an astonishingly calm demeanor. Slowly continuing, you say your family has fallen into decline. I will take responsibility for your family. In exchange, you must swear loyalty to me and serve me as your master. At the same time, a cold thought crossed Idrian's mind. If you cannot control your madness yourself, I will take the reins for you. A faint flicker of hope mixed with doubt flashed in Adelia's heart, and she asked again, Are you really going to take responsibility for my family? You are neither fast nor slow, responding with a firm affirmation, Yes, that's right. If you want, I will bring my family to the capital so you can meet any time. Hearing that heavy promise, she couldn't help but burst into joyful tears. I will follow your words. Immediately, Adelia clasped her hands together. Bowing respectfully, Adelia, the daughter of the Ban family, swears loyalty to Crown Prince Idrian Leyenberg. I will serve you as my master and dedicate my entire life to you. Idrian reached out and touched her head as a sign of confirming the pact, then stepped back. Good. From now on, you will obey my orders unconditionally. Adelia immediately responded with absolute obedience, following the order. At that moment, a reverent, inscrutable smile appeared on her lips. At the same time, a suspicion suddenly arose in your mind, and a restless thought began to cloud your mind, echoing endlessly in Idrian's thoughts. Hearing rumors that the Crown Prince von Y had recently appeared and started acting like a tyrant, not only using tricks to force knights to swear loyalty, but also gathering young nobles, beating them, and imprisoning them. Now you even knighted a noble lady you've never met, making her your personal knight, clearly aiming to establish a secret knightly court. Hearing these words, Idrian could only feel annoyed and wonder why everyone suddenly paid so much attention to her. She only accepted one personal knight, yet everyone has had opinions since this morning. However, that calmness was met with Lionel's furious outburst. I am busy cleaning up the mess you caused, and yet you're here fussing over women. Not stopping there, Valid also slightly sneered, his eyebrows furrowed with displeasure. So disappointing. Have you already given up that crazy idea? Even Zillion didn't miss the chance, subtly smirking with a mocking smile, making a maid a knight. Sure enough, that's just like my brother's style. Faced with relentless attacks from all sides, Idrian frowned, clearly helpless, wondering how rumors spread so quickly. Just as the tense atmosphere was about to escalate, a young maid hurriedly announced that the queen was coming. Hearing that, Lion reacted sharply, Come on. Immediately, Margarita appeared with a serious demeanor and a commanding tone, thinking that you had changed, but it seems you're planning to return to your old ways. Her voice then gradually softened. Actually, that's for the best. Once you find a wife and settle down, you'll definitely stop these mischievous tricks. Then Margarita, with an authoritative tone, declared as if issuing an unchangeable order. Trust me. This time I will find you a worthy wife. Overwhelmed with shock, Idrian froze in place, only able to helplessly say that he didn't know what else to say. In the quiet space, Adelia couldn't hide her worry and softly asked, So now even gods will have mana too? In response to her confusion, he gently reassured her with a calm voice, Yes, a very special kind of mana. Immediately afterward, Idrian began to cast the spell seriously. As the energy surged, the incantations echoed from the void, even though the world had long forgotten the sword mistress. A pure stream of energy suddenly burst forth, enveloping Adelia's body. But I remember everything. The energy grew more concentrated and spread intensely through the space. The footprints she left behind, guided skillfully by you, the streaks of light gradually condensed into a salt sword on her fingertips. As Adelia's body was fully immersed in the embrace of that power, Idrian whispered softly, and the mana flow began to rise, merging seamlessly with her body. In that moment, the final incantation echoed with authority, the majestic heartbeat of her own heart. The stream of power then spun around and gathered together. Followed by a cold, echoing sound, Adelia Bayon felt the mana. She had successfully inscribed the mana into Adelia Bayon. The mana has successfully taken shape within the body. A mana heart has been created. Feeling the intense electric current running through her body, she couldn't help but gasp in amazement. Is this mana? Seeing the stream of light flowing around, Adrian gently explains further. That is the method to train your mana heart. From now on, practice it whenever you can. But as soon as he finished speaking, his body suddenly collapsed, causing Adelia to scream in panic. Your Highness, are you okay? Struggling to hold back the trembling, Adrian mocked himself inwardly, never expecting that he would be exhausted just from creating a mana heart. To hide my weakness, I turned my face away. My voice is a bit hoarse, I'm just a little tired. Seeing that, she hesitated and asked with emotion, Why did you have to go this far? For someone as humble as me, Adrian remains strangely calm and speaks with unwavering composure. It's okay, step back. But when I felt her gaze burning into my back, I couldn't help but turn around and ask why she was looking at me like that. Immediately, Adelia knelt down, trembling with emotion as she vowed to be loyal to him for life. In the face of such sincerity, Adrian merely offered a subtle, knowing smile. Just don't forget that I am your master. That affirmation made her face light up, and she hurriedly replied, Yes, I will. Hidden like that, as soon as he turned to walk away, a fleeting worry crossed his mind. I'm afraid she will forget. The excessive arrogance from behind still did not diminish, making Adrian instinctively feel a chill down his spine and quietly think, honestly. A few days later, the atmosphere became more lively when Klaus began recounting the incident. Your Highness, regarding Bernardo Ailey, I heard he is being held by the Royal Guard as a witness in the recent chaos, and it seems no one is allowed to see him until the trial begins. Adrian couldn't hide his surprise upon hearing this. The trial. A wave of worry rose in my heart, and I asked Zorn not to tell me I also have to go to court. Noticing the owner's worry, Klaus quickly explained that the royal family doesn't need to go to court. Just like that, Adrian's attitude suddenly shifted 180 degrees, becoming unusually enthusiastic. It's good news. But then he tiredly raised his hand to stop, saying that the trial was being blown out of proportion. Suddenly remembering something, Adrian turned to the person still cleaning. Adelia, how is she doing now? She was in a dazed state. She was surprised and asked again, Yes, what do you mean, Your Highness? With his characteristic nonchalance, he directly asked about her mana heart. Is it stable yet? Adelia immediately reported, Yes, Your Highness. Satisfied with the response, Adrian stood up, his presence commanding and authoritative. Good, from today on you will train with me. He pointed his thumb toward the window and gave a brief order, Go change your clothes and meet me at the training ground. At the same time, upon seeing the item in Adelia's hand, Adrian couldn't help but feel helpless and reminded her, then threw away the cloth. Now she's a knight. Under the spacious training yard, he performs a few basic moves, but the peaceful atmosphere is suddenly broken by a stern voice asking, What do you think you're doing? I don't think so, I'm just warming up. Seeing your indifferent attitude, Vale stepped forward and said sharply, It's not me. He then pointed towards the shadow of Adelia, who was heavily running with tired steps, and said loudly, That girl over there. Despite the protests swirling around, Adrian remained strangely calm, ignoring the rumors and saying, I am training her to become a knight. That answer was like a spark that ignited Vale's fury. The knight's title means nothing to him. Given the current situation, how can you be so reckless? With the continuous bombardment, the bridge is clearly losing patience. Why are you meddling so much? If you hate that, why do you keep coming here? Just then, Adelia also ran over, breathless. Your Highness. Exhausted and collapsing from fatigue, she still managed to report, 10 rounds done. Adelia's appearance and Vale's fury made the atmosphere feel thick and heavy. Feeling the tension, she hesitantly spoke. Your Highness, I apologize. It's my fault. But before the words could be spoken, Adrian decisively cut in. Forget it. Take this. He swiftly swung his sword toward Adelia and gave the command. Today, I will teach you the basic stance. Immediately after, Adrian's body moves gracefully. Draw a smooth sword line, first into position, then swing the sword like this. Once you're done, lower your stance confidently and try it out. Even though her hand still trembled heavily from exhaustion, she still managed to control the sword just like that. Suddenly, Adelia's emerald eyes widened, shining with a strange light. In just a blink, she performed the moves spectacularly. Watching that scene, Vale couldn't hide his amazement. Even Idrin was thrown into confusion, her mind shaken to the core as she mimicked the attire after just one glance at the star. Meanwhile, Adelia maintained her composed demeanor and quietly turned to ask, Is the stance of the god correct? At this moment, a wave of negative thoughts begins to surround and invade your mind. Wait a moment, if I'm not careful, she will surpass me in the blink of an eye. The slave mentality means obeying the strong, not respecting the weak. I was worried because of how that prince used to dominate her in the past. What if she surpasses me now? Adria narrowed her eyes in suspicion, glancing subtly to the side. Seeing that talent, Lei furrowed his brow slightly and stroked his chin thoughtfully, surprised at how terrifying her abilities are. Realizing the opponent's intention, he gently nudged the person next to him in the stomach as a warning. "What are you about to do?" Adria's eyes narrowed sharply, her voice carrying a cold warning not to provoke her. In response to that threat, he only sneered arrogantly, saying he could impose an invisible pressure on the girl, but he wouldn't be able to control her. Breaking free from that terrifying pressure, Adria's body involuntarily trembled. Amidst the storm of magic, he furrowed his brow, a surge of rebellion rising within him. If it had been that bastard, he would have trembled and retreated immediately. But I am not him. Immediately you lower your head, and a cold voice like ice echoes, "If even I cannot control her." At this moment, a brilliant blue glow suddenly surges forth. Adria confidently asserts her dominance. No one can challenge her because she is. With each word she speaks, the surrounding energy begins to change color, having drunk the blood of the undefeated tyrant, the blood of the vast and countless supreme beings. The true form of the Grulon sword gradually reveals itself, radiant and full of deadly aura. Adria's eyes narrow, blending with a cold, commanding presence, as fragments of the soul manifest according to the will of its master. Immediately, the blue hue was replaced by a fierce blood red, swirling with intense energy. The oppressive aura from the surrounding power made even a seasoned warrior like Valet cautious. The power surrounding Adria grows more fierce and brutal. She, or rather I, slightly furrow my brow, releasing an overwhelming pressure that makes the space seem to freeze. She is mine. Adria warns coldly and sharply. She is mine. Don't even think about looking at her or foolishly craving her. I hate it intensely when someone dares to touch what belongs to me. But as soon as the declaration of ownership was finished, the world before him gradually blurred, and Adria immediately looked so surprised that her eyes widened. Even your breath begins to slip beyond control, and this sudden change makes Adria's mind fill with a deep sense of unease. My sense of reality is fading away. I can't recognize any vitality or life force. Deep in my subconscious fog, my body drifts aimlessly like being lost in an endless ocean. In that dark space, Adria's mind was torn apart by a flood of frantic thoughts, filled with coldness and enveloped in darkness. Could this be a warning? He gradually drifts within his own mind and silently thinks to himself, if this continues, this weak body will be possessed by the ghost Gru Honsenath, as if manifesting that fear. Countless thin, bony hands begin to reach out and trap Adrian. But then, with iron will, he suddenly opens his eyes. The hidden power within Adrian erupts like a storm, crushing all invisible chains. Enough. His arm pierces through the chaotic energy, grabbing the thin hand lurking below, while in reality, the magic continues to swirl around Adrian's body. At that moment, Vale's voice broke the silence. A common knight could save 10 soldiers' lives. His deep tone emphasized each word, as if to pierce through reality. A skilled knight capable of saving hundreds. That child might save thousands, or even more. Hearing those words, Adrian gently stroked his chin, a look of contemplation crossing his face. For the so-called greater good of the northern border commander. But then, you just shrugged your shoulders and turned away, saying indifferently, "I don't care." Still, Vale refused to back down. Raising her voice to grasp at the last shred of hope, no matter how many people she could save, at that moment, Adelia suddenly spoke from behind, breaking the tense atmosphere, the Count of Banu singing. She placed her hand on her chest, her eyes shining with unwavering determination. "My body and heart now belong to the underworld. I cannot obey you, Count." Seeing that scene, Adrian secretly felt pleased. It was worth pulling out his own soul for this. Slaves are forced to obey those of higher status. He then slightly curled his lips, throwing a sarcastic smile at the other person. She already said so. "And uncle, isn't it true that now you have nothing left to teach me? At first it was just to help me lose weight. If you want to continue coming to my office, then from now on, don't interfere in my affairs anymore." Faced with overwhelming reasoning, Vale reluctantly frowned and understood. Since that conversation, Adrian's mind has been haunted by those lingering thoughts. Even after that day, Uncle still came to the office every day to see Adelia, even though he couldn't do anything more because he was forbidden and stopped. He couldn't hide his pleasure, smirking slightly as he secretly thought, "It's quite amusing to see my proud uncle fall apart like this." Suddenly, the sword in Adelia's hand emits a brilliant surge of power. In an instant, that energy erupts fiercely, spreading outward from her. Vale couldn't hide her amazement when she saw that shocking scene. Even Adrian was overwhelmed with astonishment. Has she already mastered sword resonance? Quickly regaining his composure, he clapped enthusiastically. "Well done. Very good." But behind that smile, a deep anxiety began to stir in Adrian's mind. "It's so fast. I might really be falling behind. Over here, Vale can't hide her shock. Her voice sharpens as if questioning. You, the one who has taught the girl the full extent of mana, facing that fury, you still remain calm and respond without hesitation. Is there a problem? That nonchalant reply only fuels the fire, causing the elder to roar in anger, as if only you haven't learned your lesson about meddling with money. Angered by the insult aimed at his passion, Adrian quickly turned away, his voice deepening, and ordered him out. Vale is now extremely angry, his brow furrowed with frustration, realizing there was a much better path. Full of potential that you couldn't reach, and you ruined it all. Unfazed by those moral lessons, Adrian coldly ordered, "Cals, show some respect." Cal stood beside him and helplessly called out, "Your Highness, no need for others to intervene." He turned his back and said with dignity, "No need, I will walk on my own feet." Vale's broad back gradually disappeared from view, each person now bearing their own discomfort. Adelia also couldn't hide her embarrassment and sadness, and she asked bluntly, "Your Highness, is this just a trivial, petty matter?" Hearing that question, Adrian's eyebrows furrowed tightly in anger. No, absolutely not, but at this moment she is still lost in confusion. "So, why did Lady Countess say that?" You immediately ordered with a gentle tone, because he doesn't know that people nowadays have completely forgotten what the true mana heart really is. If they hadn't forgotten, they wouldn't have thrown it away like an old shoe. Then Adrian turned and walked away, his words echoing mysteriously. "She will find out soon the true power of the mana heart." The wooden sword suddenly plunged into the ground, releasing a powerful shockwave. Adrian stood calmly with his arms crossed, his sharp eyes fixed on the sword emanating mana. "You speak as if you'll never come back." Valet remained unfazed and challenged you. "Prove it." "I will only use one circle of mana. If you push me back even half a step, I will acknowledge you." Without hesitation, Adrian clenched the hilt of his sword. What was that crazy move again? As your stance erupts, accompanied by a daring wish proposal, Valet slowly raises his sword, unleashing a surge of power that ripples through his armor. "If you win, I will grant you anything you ask. Even if it's to transfer the family secret techniques, I will do it." In response to that challenge, Adrian immediately lowers his stance and adopts a defensive sword stance. "That's not what you want. Fine." Now, not keeping the opponent waiting any longer, he immediately charges forward like an arrow tearing through the wind. "Let's fight." After dodging the attack, he slightly purses his lips, a teasing look in his eyes aiming straight at her from the start. Despite him chasing after her, Valet calmly analyzes, his sword still deadly as ever. Whenever Adrian's sword swings to tear through the air, he quickly dodges in a flash. Unfazed, he continues to attack, exploiting every opening to close the distance. However, no matter how strong he was, Adrian couldn't cause any trouble for his opponent. At that moment, Valet suddenly changed the tide of the battle, raising his sword for the first time. And then he launched a direct counterattack after a period of defense. The murderous intent spread across the entire space, accompanied by a cold sarcasm. "Is that all you've got?" Under that immense pressure, Adrian gritted his teeth in frustration, as his body was forcefully pushed back by a meter. At this moment, the valet calmly stepped forward, his voice steady and unhurried, as if the opponent had already surrendered. Adrian quickly stood up, his fiery eyes showing no sign of backing down, silently thinking. "He's really annoying, but what deserves recognition, I have to acknowledge. You're very powerful, an uncle like you, waiting for me to draw mana so I can taste a more humiliating defeat. With this level of mana heart, I will definitely lose as he predicted." But instead of being afraid, Adrian suddenly narrowed his eyes and smiled with a hint of irony. What a strange thing. In the silence of the space, Adrian begins to speak softly. 400 years ago, countless knights with mana hearts achieved extraordinary feats. But now, because a more practical technique has appeared, all the brilliance of those great knights is now considered worthless. He then lowered his voice with full of sarcasm, as if everyone believed that the mana chain was a more powerful way to control mana than the mana heart. Feeling the implication in the other person's words, Valet asked calmly but firmly, "What exactly do you mean?" "Unshaken," Adrian responded with a firm statement. "My thinking is different. It's not that mana hearts are weak, but that their owners are weak. Not all mana hearts are the same." Immediately, Adrian decisively raised his sword, a slight smirk on his lips. "Have you ever heard of the Song of the Spirit?" The story seems quite old and unrelated, making Valet unable to hide his anger. "This is a sword fight, not a place for pointless talk. No need to get angry yet. I just sneered and muttered, 'I knew you would say that.' Because you also call the mana heart a primitive technique only petty mercenaries learn," feeling insulted by such lengthy words. The valet interrupts loudly, "You're talking too much. Do you need more time to catch your breath?" Faced with that lack of patience, Adrian's eyes suddenly hardened. No need. Instantly, an unbreakable truth echoed in his mind. The path a knight walks will become a victory. With a solemn demeanor, Adrian slowly raises his sword and begins to recite a sacred chant. 100 victories are my cry, and my strength. Witnessing the strange phenomenon unfolding before his eyes, Valet couldn't help but be stunned, regardless of the opponent's surprise. His voice continued as he sang the song of 100 victories against 20 dreaming apprentices becoming knights. The victory is engraved in the heart, and the engraved victory will become a battle hymn. A chilling sound then echoes, and the battle hymn has been created. Adrian's incantation continued. The spirit within the knight's sword, a common-grade battle hymn, had been created. As the incantation finished, Adrian gently smiled with a triumphant expression, his eyes shining with confident light. A small victory. The trivial actions I've taken over the past half-year, at that moment, a cold and soulless system sound echoed. Amidst the dense pressure in the space, the emotionless voice of the system echoes, and the battle song takes effect. Immediately, Vale's cold warning sounds out. No matter how hard one tries, it will be useless. As long as the mana heart remains within you, the mana chains will never be broken. Despite the threats, Adrian remains unmoved and charges forward bravely. However, even though your small sword carries immense power, it is still blocked by Vale in a decisive manner. In that moment when the sword and energy collide, Adrian silently realizes that mana from the chains can counterattack through the mana heart. He clenched his teeth and braced himself against the shockwave hitting his body, and upon witnessing that scene, Vale slightly smirked. Then he decisively swung his sword, breaking through his opponent's attack, showing that he also has impressive endurance. However, Adrian remains unfazed. A confident smile briefly appears on his face, along with the thought, "But to master this song, I have trained through hundreds of battles and endured mana from the mana chains more times than I can count." A power honed solely to face the mana chain knight. Immediately after, Adrian unleashes all his strength into his sword, brimming with confidence, having endured 100 battles and countless attacks. The raging flow of spiritual energy erupts around him, blowing his hair wildly. Adrian furrows his brow, secretly amazed at his own power. This is the true strength of his battle song. With no hesitation, your sword immediately strikes straight at the opponent. Adrian, without any fear, aims directly at the target, his mind burning with determination. Now perhaps the time to test everything. Without hesitation, your figure rushes forward like a lightning bolt. Adrian unleashes a powerful strike that makes even the opponent cautious. But the next slash continuously tore through the air at a terrifying speed. Adrian couldn't help but smile smugly, witnessing that unexpected endurance, while Valles slightly furrowed his brow. A surge of amazement rose within him, unable to believe he could hold out so long. Determined not to let the opponent gain the upper hand, he clenched his sword tightly, unleashing a burst of power. Then Valles swiftly launched a thunderous strike forward. A terrifyingly powerful strike immediately pushed Adrian back in the clash, but he quickly regained his balance, gripping his sword tightly with both hands. Valle immediately ordered to question his wife, asking how she was feeling, but Adrian's expression was emotionless in response. "I warned you already. Not all mana hearts are the same. That arrogance nearly cost you dearly. You are truly proud." Immediately after, Valle spread his legs firmly on the ground, and then he didn't hesitate to swing a phantom sword that tore through the wind and charged forward. A powerful blow and a fierce strike pushed you hard against the stone wall behind you, standing upright in the middle of the training ground. Valle coldly offers a late acknowledgement. "I will no longer hold back. Just catching up is already commendable. I praise you, Adrian, enduring the pain and forcing yourself up amidst the ruins." His mind also awakens. Indeed, ordinary soul songs are not enough. He clings tightly to the flame. The knights made reckless mistakes. They left no worthy opponents for the next generation. Amidst the nostalgic atmosphere, Adrian slowly recounts that initially all his knowledge had been fully passed down. The sword techniques, methods of refining mana hearts and physical bodies, and the legendary war soul songs. But time has erased those glorious achievements and finally caused them to fade into oblivion. They must have become mere legends. Of course, new battle hymns are still composed, but at best they only defeat 10 knights. At best, it's just a victory over 100 soldiers. At best, it's a song born from battles between humans with no reach to legend or heroism. They cannot face the new wave. Adrian suddenly fixed his cold gaze on the opponent and delivered a harsh judgment. "With such mana manipulation techniques, you will never reach transcendence." In response to those words, Valet gradually lost patience and softly snapped, Are you really drinking in broad daylight? I haven't understood what you're rambling about all this time. You didn't answer, only silently assessing in your mind, Valet Balahat, the arrogant and foolish knight. Immediately after, Adrian began to channel mana and solemnly declared that you must realize how much you have lost the greatness. The surrounding space suddenly darkens with a heavy pressure, and if you don't know, a mysterious power begins to emerge, forming invisible hands that gently touch Adrian's hand. I will teach you that which no sword can cut through, and it will shatter widely. His face now looked as if he was about to die, with a cold aura emanating from him as he drained his hot blood. Suddenly, a fierce crimson blaze like blood erupted, engulfing his entire body. Amidst the chaos of energy, the system's voice rings out repeatedly. I raise Kuka, the true dragon of destruction, but my current power isn't enough to withstand Kuka's level. The rising power causes Adrian pain again. The system's voice rings out coldly once more. A part of Kuka is cut off. A part of Kuka is cut off. Only singing one line within Kuka, a small part of a tiny segment. Adrian concentrates his strength and thrusts his sword forward, following the voice 100 scales wide. The rising surge of power and fury made Adrian's eyes bloodshot and fiery, charging forward like a beast. A full-strength slash was unleashed, carrying 1,000-weight force crashing down. The terrifying pressure causes Vale's sword to start cracking. This primal fear seizes his mind, making Jun step back in fear, and with this power he risks being consumed. In this life-or-death moment, Vale must break the rules and unleash all his strength. The two powerful magic forces collide head-on, causing a deafening explosion. Adrian is thrown back by the shockwave, and Klaus's desperate scream echoes out, "Your Highness." As the smoke gradually clears, Vale's figure still stands firm at the center of the explosion. Opposite him, the young man struggles to his feet, calmly heading forward with blood at the corner of his mouth. Seeing the magical aura still swirling around the opponent, Adrian widened his eyes and thought, wasn't it the promise to only use one ring? At this moment, he is completely lost in deep contemplation, and after using all 4 of his rings, he still cannot keep his sword intact. Despite the painful fall just now, Adrian still bravely struggles to stand up, while Vale's long-held trust seems to be shattering, constantly questioning herself. Mana from a weaker heart is less than mana from the coma ring. That is an undeniable truth, but why is that? Interrupting that chaotic train of thought, Adrian said firmly, his voice echoing with authority, as Vale, the singer, hesitated. Your eyes are still filled with shock. You emphasize each word. You have already lost. A mysterious black dragon covered in blood is roaring in pain. Stop it right now. Please stop immediately this damn soul song. Adrian wakes up suddenly after the nightmare he just had. A sharp pain suddenly strikes inside his chest. He hurriedly turned face down on the bed and clung tightly to the bedpost. His eye sockets look hollow and empty, a consequence of forcing himself to use the power of the Battle Soul song. Adrian's body radiates a faint energy, aiming to break through the solid scales. You rush forward with your crimson eyes, for the legendary song of the dragon's destruction is of mythic level. Returning to reality, Adrian softly smiles and clenches his fist, my body exhausted from it. But it was all worth the price. The space becomes silent. A blue light surrounds you, the first battle hymn I created myself. Unbeaten in 100 battles is my pride, and also my source of strength. After hundreds of battles, I have endured thousands of attacks. I will stand firm against even harsher challenges. The battle song has been slightly upgraded. Suddenly, a voice called out beside Adrian, enough to face that cursed third prince now, Your Highness. It turns out to be Adelia. She was overjoyed. Finally, Your Highness has woken up. Adelia recounted the story after Adrian fainted. Everything was in chaos after the crown prince fainted like that. I've never seen the queen mother so furious before. Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile happily. Serves them right, they deserve it. And even the angry lady had a message to send. Her words made Adrian pay attention, and he asked to be informed immediately when the prince regains consciousness. He leaned back on the bed and told Adelia not to report yet. He needed to rest a little longer. Adrian's uncle suddenly shouted in a strange way. The fragments are breaking into pieces. If they don't fully recover after being damaged by the overuse of the soul song, we will face unpredictable consequences. Those shards contain all of Adrian's memories. Reality and the past will blend into a chaotic mess, and at some point, the boundary of reality will completely dissolve, ultimately turning into madness. I will live forever within the war memories inside this fractured world. He bit his lips silently, thinking about being trapped in the memories of the sword after all the hardships to become human. Just the thought made me shiver. Agnes Bayon. She is a talented swordsman. Adrian nibbled on her food before sharing her thoughts. Being from the Bayon lineage, she must have inherited the ancestral battle spirit song. Adelia also seemed very excited about these things. Who would have thought that the goddess's ancestors were such renowned swordsmen? Adrian's tone was serious about everything. Of course, she needed to grow much more to reach the level of skill with that sword. So regarding this matter, you looked directly into Adelia's eyes and asked her what she planned to do when learning swordsmanship. Adelia, unsure of how to respond, hesitated about that. She slightly bowed with hesitation, thinking that if the goddess could truly become a knight. Adrian didn't complain and waited for Adelia to finish speaking. If she became a knight, he would forgive her. But Adelia had no intention of stopping, saying they could discuss it later if she hadn't decided yet. Adrian is curious about her next move. Adelia looks at him with eyes full of trust, the divine eyes of the princess, willing to become her sword. Adrian was amazed by her words. There are heroic songs that begin with the sound of a sword being drawn. And there are also heroic songs. Adrian froze for a few seconds, starting with the first step across the field. Adelia bows her head to show her respect to him. There are also stories that begin with a solemn vow, promising to live for the chosen lord forever. The gods will offer everything to the prince. Adelia Bayon humbly presents her song. The golden sphere floats in front of Adrian. Is this Adelia's soul song? And that sphere is gradually shrinking in Adrian's hand. Sometimes, the battle soul song also affects others. The system notifies you of new information. A new soul song has been formed. Adrian led the person in front of what he had just seen and heard. An ordinary-level battle soul song, a song of domination, had been created. The song of submission is a gesture of respect to the master. It's not a battle hymn, but more like a vow of loyalty that binds the soul. Even if she has the mindset of a subordinate, even Adelia is surprised by her own abilities, and the crown prince didn't expect the successor to compose a battle soul song and kneel. Adrian senses the change in his body and realizes he has received an unexpected breakthrough. He smiles confidently with determined eyes. As long as I remain the subject of the battle hymn, I will kneel. Adelia's face was filled with indescribable happiness, and her maturity would also benefit me. Adrian politely thanked her. Adelia's cheeks are slightly blushing as she softly calls out, "Your Highness." They look at each other in silence, though I still don't quite see what benefit that will bring. Time passes. A few days later, Adrian pouts, clearly showing his displeasure. Klaus silently observes him without saying a word. Margarita anxiously scrutinizes him, and Adrian responds awkwardly in a strained voice, "Do you feel better now? Are you okay?" His eyes were full of judgment. Dealing with this body-hating person was even easier. Margarita looked extremely guilty, but for someone close to the original owner of this body, it was quite troublesome. Her question caught Adrian's attention. "Do you resent him?" Margarita explained through tears. "My nephew didn't mean to hurt me, so even if I had some negative feelings, please let it go." Adrian replied firmly, "I have no bad feelings at all." Suddenly, Margatia shouted loudly in confusion, "How could it be not? He always treats you roughly and meddles in everything. Saying he has no negative feelings is definitely a lie." Adrian clearly showed his reluctance to say more. "Truly, I have nothing to add. I remember that day, that moment when I dealt him a heavy blow as punishment. Because all his pride and sense of righteousness have been rejected by me, he's probably struggling to accept what I planted in his mind that day. If he has enough strength, he will overcome this test. If not, even his most worthless treasure will vanish." Adrian leaned back in his chair, not wanting to think anymore. "Honestly, I don't care what happens next." But Margarita kept talking. "Your uncle chose to live with his sword rather than with people, so his gestures are often stiff and gaunt. But lately, it seems that he is very proud of me. Vale once went to see Lieno to report what happened, and you yourself have become quite boastful." Adrian's facial muscles gradually relaxed as he listened to her story, so much so that his house arrest order was issued earlier than planned. He didn't listen to anyone but made his own decisions, yet trouble came right after he was finally free. Capture them all, your uncle's position must also be in trouble. Maybe that's why he's so annoyed. Adrian stroked his chin, but then crossed his legs and asked himself, "Why is that man acting for me like that?" Niccolo radiates a brilliant aura, Your Highness, because he is a scholar worthy of Niccolo Macdell. Adrian's face darkens clearly, indicating he does not want to accept it. "I firmly refuse to accept." Karnas and Adelia both held their breath in silence. Immediately after, Adrian collapsed to the floor, crying out in distress, "Why do I have to learn, if not for knowledge? Humans are no different from beasts." "You are furious," and question Niccolo loudly, daring to stop because of me and the beast. The Lord answers Adrian very respectfully, "Because His Highness has just begun studying, so I cannot yet regard you as a beast king." Adrian arrogantly sat on the ground, refusing to cooperate. "I haven't learned anything yet. Don't use wordplay with me, just look at me, and you'll see enough. So you already know everything? Then there's no need for me to learn anything more, got it? Niccolo remains as calm as at the beginning, unchanged. If you are truly determined, then let's try this way. Place your hand on the book and propose some questions to the deity. If your abilities are truly as you claim, the deity will no longer bother you, Your Highness. Adrian smiled cunningly, finding it quite convincing, then suddenly slammed his hand on the table as if he had just realized something, and loudly argued with Niccolo, saying, "That's why people always need to watch their backs. Human nature will take over if one sees the opponent as too lenient. But you are not like that. What you said is very true." Niccolo pushed the book in front of you. "This book will pique your interest." Adrian flips through it while he is introducing the gift about it. It analyzes the relationship between the king and his vassal as a kind of contract, with the king receiving military and financial support in exchange for protecting his vassal, and the vassal seeking shelter and political stability in return for loyalty. The more I read on, the more interested I became in the content of the book, and what the old man said also makes sense. All relationships are essentially exchanges. Their conversation lasted the entire afternoon. Yes, exactly, that's right, and this part too. Niccolo gives Adrian a few more rights, so, Your Highness. Adrian smiles and waves goodbye. We'll continue the rest tomorrow. All right, I'll wait. You just keep smiling and waving for a long time. It wasn't until later that Adrian suddenly remembered. Wait, did I just attend a normal class this time? He forced himself to stay calm despite his confusion. This old man is really cunning. Niccolo just stepped out the door and sighed. Your Highness? He walked down the corridor, thinking to himself that this day was very different from what he had heard. The bright sun has reached the mountain peak, and Adrian, with a listless face, sighs. He was lying on the bed with nothing to do, so he complained that he was bored. Adrian kept tossing and turning without falling asleep. Lately I've been living with too much free time, since I haven't been training and have nothing to do. My body is also recovering. Hearing Adelia's report, I immediately sat up. Your Highness, His Majesty, and Lady Libello are here to visit you. It's been a long time since we had visitors. She carefully asked Adrian for advice on what to do. All right, invite him in. You stand upright, a faint smile forming at the corner of your mouth. It's been several days since the match, and just then he comes to visit. Adrian pauses for a few seconds before recalling that memory. But I felt a bit guilty when I remembered Valet back then. It seemed he still hadn't overcome the trauma I caused. Valet held his breath silently. It wasn't until he spoke that Adrian realized he was truly sorry. Valet sincerely expressed to Adrian that he had broken his promise and caused serious harm because of it, and he had no excuse. You feel guilty about those words, but only reflect inwardly. The reason I keep my wounds is not because of his sword aura, but because I have abused the War Soul song and the true destruction of the heart. Margarita's words cut straight to Adrian's heart. He must also be having a hard time, since I caused trouble again. Valet didn't hold back and went straight to the point, so just say it. What do you want? Moreover, Valet offered Adrian options. If you want my arm, I will give it. If you want my eyes, I will surrender them. I don't need those useless things. The boy crossed his arms, glancing away with a displeased look, as a sword of the past was haunted by inner demons again. Adrian sighed and forced himself to respond. Fine. I will be merciful. He looked V straight in the eyes, returning to a serious state, and said his wish first. Adrian made a request to V. Please let me go on a trip. He asked back with a puzzled look. The curfew has ended, so isn't it possible for you to go outside now? Adrian nodded slightly to clarify, not just a day trip, but going far away, if possible, leaving the capital. Valet listened quietly without looking at him. Adrian kept talking non-stop, saying it would take time to arrange the schedule, and with the upcoming banquet, going far was impossible. So be it. The valet turned away as if he had silently agreed with what you just said. Fine. I will inform you when everything is ready. Just go. Carl stared at Adrian intently like an alien. You look annoyed and turn around to question him. So what are you doing? Why are you looking at me like that? Well, Carl's awkwardly answers that pointless question. Just surprised. I thought he would ask for something more unreasonable. Because the Countess broke her promise. This is a rare opportunity to extort many things. Adrian hesitated, unable to speak clearly. The words you just said surprised Carl's. Seeing him act that way made me feel sorry. He suddenly burst out laughing, making Adrian feel embarrassed. What? Why are you laughing, Your Highness? You seem too relaxed lately. The voice echoed and caught the attention of Prince Adrian. Adelia happily announced to you that the letter from the sky had arrived. The letter was sealed properly and beautifully. In the contents, it mentioned that I have achieved some small success recently. Maybe I will visit soon. I hope you stay well until that day. Sent from Alwanker Gayin. Adrian happily held the letter in his hand. The news came at just the right time. About 5 days later, he received good news from his uncle, and 2 days after that, we set out. Brother, what is the name of the land we are about to pass through? Ellen or Elin, huh? Valet was helpless in the face of your fuss. Why can't you just sit still for once? Valet stepped back to calm Adrian down and said, I will explain everything, so please go inside first. Ellen County, the territory of Count Ellen, is the largest weapons workshop of the royal family. There are high-quality ore mines in the territory, along with skilled blacksmiths who forge them into weapons. Valet honestly admits that more than half of the royal weapons originate from Ellen, which is impressive. Adrian happily thought to himself, I've improved a lot. It's time to find my own sword. At first I planned to take any sword from the royal armory, but Charles honestly refused to let me. Sorry, Your Highness. I must warn you, if that impostor touches the sword again, he will face severe punishment. Because it is a royal order, we cannot provide weapons for you, Your Highness. That statement hit Adrian straight in the heart, leaving him with no way out. Adrian sneered and made plans for himself. His past crimes are understandable, but anyway, if I want good weapons, I have to find them outside the palace. He subtly glanced out the window. Adrian quietly assessed Valet in every detail. He was surprisingly careful compared to his appearance. The army led by Valet is moving forward. Too slow, close the window, no way. And so, the 20-day journey has just begun. This journey will pass through Count Elan's territory, 3 days from the capital, then stop at the fortress city 2 days further on. They looked around there before returning to the capital, and now, Adrian sat silently in the carriage, not speaking, forced to stay still for 3 days inside the wagon. Adelia sitting opposite him was dozing off, and the person in front of him was nothing special, only replying with yes or no. Adrian sighed in frustration, with nothing to do. He ended up creating tasks for himself, so he might as well check his mana heart. Adrian shifts to a serious state. The battle song has filled my hollow heart. He bows his head slightly, with light always surrounding him. But now it's time to recharge. The rattling of the carriage, the cold wind passing by, and the knights outside chatting. I gather the music from the hidden mana particles in the space, gradually filling the hollow heart. Adrian's eyes widened unusually. He looked at the orb in front of him and then questioned himself. My mana song. Why has it suddenly become so big? I risked testing a miracle beyond the limit, and caught a glimpse of a great will. Adrian froze, as if he realized something it must be. Due to forcing himself to use the battle song. The influence of the song has altered its nature, and the mana heart has expanded. As a result, your body can now withstand more mana and has reached the sword master level, allowing for a deeper connection to the source. Some forms of power have been loosened. The third eye's power has advanced significantly, and the third ear's power has also improved remarkably. Adrian awoke dazed after the trance. Adelia gently called you out of curiosity, Your Highness. Adrian waved his hand dismissively. He clenched his fists and smirked confidently, having taken another step forward. The scene shifts to the Ellen Baroness estate as Adrian leads the surprised group toward the Grand Castle. Feeling honored to be received, Your Highness. Edgar and Torrens salute sharply to welcome your group. Edgar of the Ellen family greets you. Crown Prince Torrens of the Ellen family requests an audience with His Highness, Prince Adrian Leonberger I. He happily receives the visit. Thank you for the warm reception. The long journey must have been tiring. Please go inside and rest for now. Inside, Adrian looks around, searching. I hear this is the land of weapons. Every noble residence is filled with armaments, but they are all flashy and showy, not suitable for battle. Adrian like a restless wind, never stopping for a moment. He silently thought to himself, it seems what I seek is not easy to find here. Adrian curiously asked Edgar, I hear there is a blacksmith guild in the territory. Yes, Your Highness. You don't hesitate and make your request. I want to go see it. The two of them quickly follow Adrian's lead. Edgar didn't forget to warn Adrian that the blacksmiths are very rough and stubborn. He kept talking throughout the entire journey without stopping. They keep working regardless of the Lord's arrival, their words as sharp as an axe blade, cold and coarse. If I have offended, I hope Your Highness will forgive me. The scene before me completely captures Adrian's attention. The heavy iron hammer kept pounding down on the heated axe as everyone here worked diligently, the heat from the forge burning hot. If anyone can't bear it, just say so. Adrian's whole body seems to be infused with new energy, and the space is filled with the sound of hammers striking iron. Seeing that I am silent, Exca politely called out, Your Highness. The fire roared, and the blacksmiths poured all their effort into their work amidst the sound of hammering. Adrian gasped for breath, a thrill of excitement in the air around him, accompanied by a clear, ringing echo. In front of him was an incredibly majestic scene. Banring was working seriously, ignoring everyone around him. A flicker of fire appears in Adrian's dark eyes as the sword strikes directly at him. That's right. It's the first memory I can still recall. Adelia reached out to wipe the sweat away and brought Adrian back to reality. She is worried about your health, Your Highness, and feels embarrassed about sweating too much. Adelia kept wiping while Adrian didn't know what to say. Immediately afterward, he shyly turned his face away, and the space suddenly became eerily silent. Zaxxon and his craftsmen bowed respectfully in a line, presenting their petition to the prince today, while Exka briefly introduced himself as Zaxxon, the head of the blacksmiths. Banri kept working without paying any attention to him. Zaxxon hurriedly shouted in worry, "What are you doing? Stop and kneel down to surrender." Adrian angrily clenched his horse's reins, causing a commotion. He glanced back and assessed the situation. The worker's eyes seemed to be filled with fear as the sword is carefully placed on the shelf, still waiting to be drawn. Adrian looked at him and whispered quietly, "It seems he's being forced to do this to welcome me. No need for that. Saxon, go ahead. If you want to extinguish all the fires in the kiln, just do it." They excitedly prepare to continue the work, doing something, getting the tools ready, lifting the tank up. Despite the chaos, Adrian remains quietly standing in place. He watched carefully without taking his eyes off, even for half a step. Banri continued working patiently, paying no attention to his surroundings. The sound of hammering continued non-stop as Adrian stood quietly watching him work. A fiery glow ignited in his eyes. Adrian once again found himself falling into a vast sea of flames. The sword was carefully and securely forged by the blacksmith. The diligent image of Banri working hard appeared in his eyes. Adrian, sweating profusely, wondered to himself what this feeling really was. Edgar, walking past, casually brought up the topic. For some unknown reason, he has been forging swords and then melting them down for half a year. Adrian tries to guess if it's because they are all defective, but he only shakes his head sadly and sighs in helplessness. Not necessarily. Edgar recalled Banrick's focused demeanor at work, a sense of respect rising with the story. Every sword he crafted was praised as a masterpiece, earning him the title of Master Blacksmith. The sword techniques I saw before, I think, had no flaws. Even so, he still keeps losing his temper. It's really hard to understand. Hearing this, Edgar furrowed his brows even more. It's not over yet. For almost a month, he hasn't slept, only focusing on his work. He's quite old now, so we are very worried. After listening carefully to the craftsmanship, Adrian said nothing, but deep down he had already formed an opinion. A true blacksmith. A few days later, Adrian would come to the forge every morning to work and leave late at night. Throughout that time, the old blacksmith continued tirelessly with his daily work. I only quietly watched from the side, quite different from the initial tension when the Ellen family heard that the first prince would visit, but nothing unusual happened. Days passed and nights came. Everything remained peaceful as before. At last, the day arrived for Adrian to set out. He just stood there, unwilling to leave, his legs like they were nailed to the forge. Your friend Rick was still diligently hammering, the sound of the hammer striking the hot iron echoing loudly. Adrian knew he couldn't stay any longer, so he sighed sadly. I wanted to see the finished sword before I leave. He left his sentence unfinished in frustration and then turned away. But deep within my heart, I still secretly hold on, which is truly unfortunate. Adrian gently shook his head, trying to suppress his feelings to make a decision. All right, I'm leaving now. I hear there will be a farewell party tonight, and we must depart at dawn tomorrow. Edgar glanced after Adrian's figure, having observed him all this time and understood his longing. Perhaps that's why, even just a little, he still hoped that Adrian would see the finished sword before leaving. Luck was on their side as dawn broke. Just as Adrian was about to leave, he was suddenly called back. Your Highness? Edgar hurriedly ran over to deliver the news, unable to hide his joy and excitement. It seems the master blacksmith has finished the sword. The group quickly moved towards the workshop. Rick had been standing there waiting for them in the dawn light, carefully polishing the new sword as the early morning sun's rays traced along its blade, making it shine brilliantly. Rick slowly bows his head, lowering himself before Adrian. With his hands raised, he presents the treasured weapon he has poured his heart into creating, and Rick gently begins to speak about this sword. With a calm yet steady voice, I humbly present it to Your Highness. Then there was a moment of silence that was almost deafening, leaving not only Adrian but everyone following him in awe. That day, the sun bore witness to this destiny, rising and falling like the song of the builders, forging it like the sun just peeking over the horizon, then letting it fade away, carrying the hues of the ocean's violet cloak. If we do that, a sword like the sun, like the king himself, will be born. Adrian looked at his reflection in the shining blade and curiously asked, "Does it have a name?" Banric sincerely suggests if we call it twilight, what do you think? Adrian happily immerses himself in the story, so is it the sunset twilight at dusk or the dawn twilight at sunrise? Banric calmly and softly analyzed, with the god, it is the end, but for the prince, perhaps it is a new beginning. Banric was deeply grateful for your compliment. It is truly an honor, Your Highness. But before he could finish speaking, he suddenly collapsed. The exhaustion from overexertion caused Banric to faint. Chaos, noticing something was wrong, approached and asked Han, Your Highness, Adrian is supporting Banric's exhausted body and seriously orders you to tell them that I must stay here tonight. Before long, the sky will be dark. Adrian dares not slack off, staying vigilantly by the sick forest every second. Banric gradually regains consciousness. He ignored his labored breathing and tried to speak. That moment when the prince stood behind my bed, the sword seemed to take shape in that instant, like destiny. The scene from that day reappeared clearly before Banric's eyes as he confidently declared that it chose its own day of birth. Adrian tilted his head, attentively listening, then gently smiled. Do you think so? The boy with the beautiful eyes quietly spoke. Actually, when Adrian leans down to whisper something into Banric's ear, he suddenly widens his eyes in shock after hearing it. A shiver ran through Banric's entire body. Even his voice trembled uncontrollably. Oh my God, so he is actually Adrian? He nodded, clearly acknowledging it. Yeah, so how could I not understand his feelings? Banric tried to regain his composure by exhaling slowly. He closed his eyes partially to calm his mind. So that's it. Now I understand. Prince, please let me hold the sword for a moment. Adrian quickly complies with the request, grasping the moonlit sword as if to feel its soul. He muttered to himself, whether to reassure himself or to entrust his midday dream to Adrian, hoping this sword would become as great as that day itself. Adrian was taken aback and remained silent for a moment. Then he suddenly snapped out of his trance, grasping Banric's trembling hand to confidently assure him that it would be so, but there was no response to his promise. The person in front of him has taken their last breath. Adrian gazes intently at Banric's satisfied face. He emphasized once more, as a reminder to himself, absolutely. The next day, Edgar brought a different sword. He happily handed it to Adrian, though he dared not speak of the sword's true value, as it was crafted with all his soul, and this demon sword was originally meant to be offered to His Highness. Edgar sincerely requested that you accept it while you consider the gift. Adrian looked very excited and thought to himself, all right, I'll just admire the demon sword while feeling satisfied. Even though it's not a top grade, it's still an excellent mid-grade. Edgar saw the ancestor's face suddenly turn serious and tried to subtly probe, Your Highness, about that sword, but Adrian deliberately pretended not to understand and interrupted him. A sword forged with the utmost dedication by a renowned general is an invaluable gift, yet you still want to offer the demon sword as well. The loyalty of the Ellen family to the Emperor truly sets them apart. Since you've pushed it this far, Edgar dare not object anymore. He can only sadly accept his fate, which is the honor of the divine family. He says that, but deep down he's restless, planning to use the dazzling demon sword as bait to retrieve the master's sword. Now, it all ends in failure, losing his grand plan. After saying goodbye, the convoy set off as planned, while the valet hurriedly gave instructions everywhere. Followers and the bin bottle go slowly behind. Kaibin move forward. The horse ran out of steam because the schedule was delayed. I have to hurry all the time. Everyone, follow the book. Lin and the attendants all shouted in unison, Yes, sir. Your Highness, Adrian quietly observes the busy scene. You couldn't help but blurt out your admiration. He looks really busy. San mentioned this, so Adrian took the opportunity to ask about it. By the way, during my time at the Count's domain, I haven't seen his shadow anywhere. The valet hesitated for a moment before replying, Your Majesty has given me a few private instructions. You immediately head there and bow your head, pondering. It seems my journey is coming to an end. The valet saw that you were cooperative, so he didn't want to say more and turned away to give a stern order. That's right, you should also get ready to leave. Today, I will ride fast to reach the Crystal City before night. I will have to urge the horse. Adrian hesitated for a moment before calling out, Hey, wait. He honestly confessed in a nonchalant way, I don't know how to ride a horse. The valet quickly corrected his smell on the spot, too stubborn to utter a single word. Everyone's eyes are on Adrian, but he remains calm as if nothing happened. I'm a swordsman, so why would I bother the horse? Adrian's journey was a bit challenging as he traveled to the city of the master swordsman, sometimes struggling to hold his horse steadily, even if only a little. Obstacles also caused confusion. Sometimes that poor horse would abandon Adrian and run away, making everything quite difficult. Finally, after a long struggle, Adrian finally made it there. But in front of him was a vast fortress. Although it didn't take half a day as expected, He had arrived after a full day's journey. Adrian exclaimed in surprise, "This is the city of the Master Builder." The steady sound of footsteps echoed as thousands of soldiers emerged with an imposing presence. Leading the way, Jock respectfully bows. "Wang Ro Tenga Jock greets your highness, the most noble prince." The lion hunting team bows to the noble lineage of the Leonberger bloodline. The boy looks helpless, somewhat speechless at this overly grand and ostentatious display. Then Adrian began to observe everyone opposite him and silently consider if he needed to give a reason. His gaze swept around and finally stopped at the person standing at the end of the line. And that was all. Adrian begins to step forward with a hint of anticipation, calling out as he walks, "Owen!" She immediately bowed as if paying homage. "Your Highness?" Owen knelt on one knee and spoke. "The servant girl longs to see your Highness's face once a day." His quick reaction was subtle, but suddenly a stronger surge of energy rose up behind him. "All true? The malice directed at my master has already provoked Adelia." Adrian immediately pats his loyal maid on the shoulder to steady her emotions. Adelia. His gaze gradually became more distant, and she finally regained her composure. Adelia hurriedly clasped her hands in front of her and bowed her head. "Yes, your Highness," and Adrian quietly felt lucky inside. "Luckily, I trained her to be an obedient slave early on." Finally, he smiled and turned back to face the people in front of him. "All right," Adrian quickly ordered his knights. "Ah, I almost forgot. Follow me." You smile with a hint of meaning. "We still have many things left unsaid, don't we?" At the same time, I also quietly thought to myself that it would be even better if those behind also came along. With the sword in hand, Adrian maintained a calm and composed demeanor, his gaze steady, yet exuding unwavering confidence. A boundless anticipation arose in his mind. He wanted to test the swordsmanship of the banquet team, the top of the kingdom. Finally, he spoke up a bit arrogantly. "Who will let me witness the swordsmanship of the royal chef here?" I feel the gaze of those around me, but no one steps forward. Only by replacing Adrian can I slowly offer a guarantee. If my position makes you hesitant, I pledge with the honor of Leon Berger. I won't hold the outcome of the duel against you. You're asking in a provocative tone. Still no one dares. Is the renowned Heavenly Chef team talking nonsense like this? It seems that the top title in the kingdom is just bragging. After a long standoff, someone finally dares to step forward. Denon Zalil respectfully introduces himself, appearing modest and cautious. A measured voice. Although this status may not yet be worthy of representing the Swordmaster if His Highness permits. "May I have a chance to try in front of you?" Adrian remained calm and unconcerned. No need to ask for permission. I was the one who suggested it first. On the opposite side, he didn't wait for the signal and rushed forward with his sword. "Be careful then." You were not panicked by this surprise attack, only confidently smiling. Then you gently waved your hand and the two swords crossed in midair. Denon's face showed a hint of panic as he clearly felt the overwhelming power before him. Adrian's strike sent the opponent flying several meters away. He just calmly looked on and softly uttered two words. Then, when everyone saw him fall to a single sword, they became a bit panicked. Seeing that, Polo bravely stepped forward without hesitation, asking Zalier Sr. for advice. Zalier has only been in the team for a year, while I have 3 years of experience. But the result was not much different, with Adrian defeating his opponent with just one sword strike. The other members who stepped forward one after another met the same fate. I am Holly, a 5-year apprentice, and Judith with 8 years of experience, and some are even stubborn. A swordsman will never lose to anyone. However, those guys were no match for Adrian. With just a wave of his hand, he scattered them all. The sky over the Swordmaster City remained clear and blue. Like the scene of injured people lying scattered, there is a bit of contrast on the ground. After defeating the small fry, Adrian feels a bit discouraged and laments inwardly, "Oh my God. I was planning to fight those official ones, but now I'm a bit slow." Then, you softly called out, "Awen." She immediately obeyed the order, "Yes, Your Highness," while Adrian simply issued a command, "When I leave, you will go with me." I don't know what he's thinking, but a gentle smile slowly appeared on the corner of his lips. Then Awen immediately bowed respectfully, obeying the prince's order. Just as the tense atmosphere was settling, a voice called out to him, "Your Highness." At this moment, he felt a bit suspicious. Things seemed too easy. Zulum stepped out with a confident look. "I heard the prince likes fish to make it more interesting. Let's have a small game." He only suggested it. "If I win, Your Highness?" Adrian, knowing what the opponent wanted to say, immediately cut him off. "No. You clearly showed your stance. Awen is not a prize for the game." Hearing this, she felt touched. "Your Highness." Adrian gently lowered the sword in his hand, then replaced it with another weapon, and Kaus brought out his sword. When the sword was offered, he calmly grasped it, if he was the winner. As Adrian drew his demon sword, he calmly said, "I will give you this sword. Awen stood beside him, stunned. Dunham was also very surprised by the challenge he issued. She hurriedly tried to persuade and stop him. "Your Highness, forgive me, but you are worth 1,000 times more than this sword." On the contrary to those tricks, Dunham on the opposite side was extremely happy with this victory reward. "Yes, Your Highness, you can imagine how excited he is." Fahrenheit. Dunham, the knight of the elite team, is close to reaching the third step. Idarian, hearing this, remains unfazed and simply remarks, "In the end, it's just the second step." He immediately became furious, claiming this sword was the 17th masterpiece of the renowned smith. Dunham boldly declared that if the prince won, it would belong to him. You immediately felt intrigued, finding it hard to believe the coincidence. Then, with a swift and decisive motion, you drew your sword. "I also have a sword forged by that master, the 100th of his works, but Dunham doesn't trust it at all. I have never heard of a renowned smith forging a 100th sword. Of course, this is the last sword he finished just a few days ago." Hearing that, he also acted as if it was nothing, fine with me. Even though His Highness is on the wrong path, I can see the relentless effort in every step he takes, so I will show some respect and fight seriously. Idarian simply repeated softly, "A mistake." It seems Dunham's words didn't sit well with him. So arrogant. But this position was never meant for me. Behind you, there are always loyal subordinates like Adelia who respect me. Not far away, Arwen and Chaos are also watching closely. Idarian finally calmly concluded with a sentence. Just the word subordinate is enough. Then he quickly turned to remind Adelia to observe carefully. She hesitated for a moment before hurriedly replying, "Oh yes, huh?" Your heart ignited with a fierce fire, illuminating the path ahead. It was then filled with a strong determination that this is the way you must go forward. Adelia also seemed to sense Idarian's thoughts and gently responded, "Yes." Seeing her owner before her, she felt an even stronger sense of confidence. Adelia, not disappointing expectations, immediately understood the situation. "I understand now. I will remember." "Sir," the valet's voice echoed through the misty teacup, breaking the silence. "So, how many times have we been to the forge already, facing the season?" The broadmind added, the voice somewhat heavy, the 4th time. That response made the valet's eyebrows slightly furrow, creating a moment of contemplative silence. Gok continued with that deep, resonant tone to analyze the current situation. The 4th prince wouldn't visit since he isn't in line for the throne. The 3rd and 5th princes have visited while the crown prince is under detention. Not long ago, the 2nd prince also stopped by. No matter how bad the reputation is, the crown prince is still the legitimate heir of the kingdom. Then, seemingly unable to contain his anger any longer, he suddenly shouted, "Given how things have turned out, your fault is not insignificant. If you, commander of the 3rd Legion, had only supported His Highness even a little, he wouldn't be in such a dire situation now. But now, why are you pretending to be the protector of the prince in the face of that questioning and unable to speak up in your defense? You only bow your head silently, questioning yourself. Not a single word wrong, I truly did abandon that grandson of mine. Not a benevolent ruler, but a tyrant, a ruthless monster beyond salvation. That is my grandson." One day, the boy was drunk on forbidden lust. I immediately scolded him, and memories from the past flooded back. The scene shows the man angrily grabbing Idarian by the collar and shouting loudly, "Still conscious, isn't he?" Facing the harshness of that time, he could only grit his teeth, his eyes blazing with fury, and once again drown himself in a stream of bitter remorse. Yet it dared to swing its sword at me, truly hopeless and beyond cure. When I returned north in disappointment, my nephew offered me a cup of poison wine, along with a letter bearing 2 words, "A gift." In that fragmented memory, he was boiling with rage as he clenched the poison bottle in his hand, and then he drank it all in one gulp, letting his thoughts flood back. I have burned away that poison and repaid the debt with mana, along with the little remaining affection. But the mischievous child who seemed never to change has now become different. He has been diligently training, growing immensely each day. Suddenly, his mind interrupted his thoughts with a question. "Didn't you yourself once say that the crown prince could never become king?" Vale unconsciously clenched his hand, resting on his lap, silently affirming. But now, he was completely different from before. With all his sincerity, the old man bowed deeply and begged earnestly, "Please give him a chance. At least let him stand at the same starting line as the other princes." Immediately afterward, Vale bowed his head and lowered himself to the lowest point. "I beg you." This action made my brow furrow, and my face showed a mix of surprise and confusion. I just couldn't understand anymore. I don't know if it's the person who changed or if the prince himself has changed, but for now, lift your head. Lion Lord, before your words are even finished, the tense atmosphere was suddenly torn apart as a loud voice shouted, "Lord Wallow Den." His voice was frantic and hurried. "Your Highness the Crown Prince," walking unsteadily and trying to reassure his worried companion. "Don't worry too much. Duan Ham is a sensible person. Nothing will happen even if he really went to fight. How could he dare to defeat a prince?" Contrary to that optimism, Vale calmly replied with a different tone. Now the concern was not about the prince, but about that ordinary swordsman. His words only made him more confused as he muttered to himself. "You really are becoming strange, looking pale and always speaking confusing words." At that moment, Duanham suddenly was knocked back towards them at an incredible speed. Witnessing his trusted subordinate defeated, he shouted in panic, "Duong Ham on the training ground." The soldiers' cheers echoed endlessly. "Duong Ham is unconscious now. The prince has won." He looks so shocked he can't believe his eyes. What is going on here? Meanwhile, Vale remains as calm as if he had predicted this all along. "I told you it was unlucky." On the opposite side, Edion gently wiped the bloodstain from the corner of his mouth, still exuding an arrogant aura despite his wound. Vale then calmly made a pointed remark, revealing that the real concern was not on this side, but on his own, as his fighting spirit still burned fiercely through his challenge. Next, Edion involuntarily recalled previous memories, pondering silently while quietly assessing, constantly repeating himself that a knight only truly matures from the second round. Amidst the relentless barrage of attacks, he slightly furrowed his brow. Edion then quietly reached a firm conclusion. That statement wasn't at all exaggerated. With his current level, swordsmanship alone isn't enough, but he can't rely on poetry to fight a seasoned knight. After a moment's hesitation, he decisively made his decision. Then immediately, the super concentration skill is activated. Edion instantly feels the gradually emerging power. All sounds disappear. This body is no longer mine. His eyes glow with a fierce blue light, sensing the endless source of power swirling around him. Edion quietly reaffirmed in his mind, "It's that same feeling again." After a breath, Edion and Junham charged at each other simultaneously, like two beasts. Neither yielding, their combined strength and clash created a tremendous shockwave. But in the face of that overwhelming force, Junham was finally pushed back. Edion smirked slightly, his demeanor relaxed as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then he threw a disdainful glance and a short challenge to the crowd. Immediately after, another soldier charged forward, sword swinging to tear through the air. In response to that aggression, Edion merely sneered with contempt. He then gracefully turned around, wielding his sword with confident ease. Edion's strike was so powerful that the opponent struggled in vain to defend, and it was swiftly dealt with in an instant. No one is strong enough to be his opponent. Surrounded by enemies, Edion wears a triumphant smile of a conqueror. Finally, as the attacks gradually subsided, only he remained standing there. Among the fallen soldiers at his feet, Edion stood proudly at the center. A faint pang of guilt flickered in my heart after each heavy, breathless moment of struggle. Witnessing that shocking scene, the remaining onlookers couldn't hold back their cheers. Peyton has fainted, and His Highness has defeated 5 people in a row. Amidst the chaos of reality, Edion's mind quietly drifts with reflections. 100 battles fought, 1,000 waves crashing. Even as the wave of the sect leader's power surges, I still tremble. At the same time, a cold system voice echoes, and Thika's swordsmanship gains a new level. Edion's thoughts kept flowing. Now in his mind, he finally drew his sword and stood up. The cold, mechanical sound rang out once again. Thika Duel's sword has reached a transcendent realm. Thika swordsmanship transforms to match the new realm. It becomes Duel Thika. A sense of excitement seeped into every cell. Edion gently smiled, quietly confirming that he had succeeded. Immediately after, he collapsed completely exhausted and helpless onto the ground. Seeing this, Dunnock quickly approached, caring and asking if he was okay. A gentle, warm smile appeared on his face as he respectfully expressed his admiration for Dinga's victory. And like a wave spreading, the surrounding soldiers also responded in unison. I bow respectfully before the sword of Crown Prince Din Ha, before the resilient will, before the victory. Surprised by this sudden change in attitude, Adrian couldn't help but be amazed and silently thought to himself, "What is this? And just now they wanted to devour me alive." Sensing that, Yak spoke up to clear things up. Their nature is actually quite simple. He clapped loudly and then calmly continued, "Swordsmanship and victory are what excite them the most." Looking at his face, he's probably thinking they will hold a grudge. At this moment, Valet also stepped forward, softly sharing his profound insights. An honest failure is even more valuable than a petty victory. Both sides give their all, and winning or losing doesn't really matter. Amid the joyful atmosphere, the soldiers began to chatter excitedly. Perhaps Junham would feel a bit resentful, as he was once very proud of that sword, only to have to surrender it. It's so relaxing. Just because of a sword, he's so arrogant. Hearing those words, Adrian quietly smiles to himself, his mind brightening. He once thought that everything, including Tamana, had been forgotten and discarded. But it turns out that one thing remains unchanged: the calm acceptance of victory or defeat, the respect for the strong, and the bearing of true knights. The luxurious carriage bearing the royal crest was already waiting to pick up Adrian. Before stepping on, he turned to softly smile at those remaining and said, "See you next time." Immediately, he bowed respectfully. "May you always be safe until then," Adrian also politely responded, and Countess wished him well. Ding turned away, but then, as if remembering something, he spun around to give instructions. "Oh right, Lady Countess, go through the black door. Please, keep everything that happened during my stay a secret." This unexpected request leaves him surprised, and he asks again, wouldn't revealing it be beneficial for the underworld? In response to their surprise, Adrian gently placed his hand over his mouth. Your voice then reveals a mischievous streak hidden beneath it. I just want to tease some bastard. While all the swordsmen are busy carrying luggage, Kars respectfully speaks. Tonight we will camp here. The god requests to patrol around for a bit. Adrian nods softly in response. All right. Over there, Eowyn still quietly observes everything with a slightly longing look. Seeing that pensive expression, he silently thought to himself, Eowyn will get used to it soon. A feeling of exhaustion began to set in, and Adrian let out a soft yawn before slowly entering the tent to rest. Inside the tent, Adelia had prepared everything meticulously. Your Highness, the day has come. Seeing this scene, a sense of helplessness briefly appeared in his mind. What I clearly gathered is that he is a genius swordsman with S-rank ability, yet now he is doing trivial things like a maid. Seeing her slightly hesitant expression, she couldn't help but worry, and softly asked, Your Highness, is there something you are not satisfied with? Lying back on the bed with pleasure, Adrian casually said, No, that's enough. Go outside. Hearing this, Adelia obediently bowed and obeyed. Yes, Your Highness? Alone again, his mind gradually sank into deep thoughts, realizing that the elite S-class swordsmen are far different from what he imagined. Most ordinary swordsmen do not exceed level B swordsmanship. In the past, even with a lifetime of training, they only reached mid-level S swords, then faded away like ordinary humans. But those thoughts kept circling in his mind. And now, those very same individuals had reached a level comparable to S-rank swordsmen in their 20s or 30s. Although the superhuman skills have declined and are no longer comparable, the abilities of ordinary humans have advanced remarkably. Suddenly, Adrian sat up abruptly, his voice full of conviction. That is Sigmana. His mind gradually sank, but then new thoughts arose. My father once reached a transcendent realm in the past, so giving up that potential makes me extremely dissatisfied. But this era no longer offers the chance to build a career beyond the limits of the extraordinary. Then he clenched his fist and thought to himself, in the end, it's all due to the flow of the era. I have to admit, I don't understand this age, but instead of giving up, Adrian's will burns brighter, so I will start to understand it all over again. At that moment, a loud round of applause suddenly broke the silence, showing a good attitude. Vale slowly stepped in, praising without hesitation. It's not too late. If you try now, you can still achieve your dream. Those words only make you more confused and wonder, and die. He continued to muster his emotions, full of hope, and said, Isn't it true you've already gained the favor of the master? Other princes find it hard to get along with them as easily as you do. Even Vale speaks in a surprisingly gentle and broad tone, a wise decision indeed, This sudden change in attitude shocked Adrian to the core, leaving him bewildered and questioning what was happening. He couldn't hold back and shouted in suspicion, Uncle, are you crazy? Uncle, after that exaggerated reaction, he immediately regained his usual calm and serious demeanor, as if the intense match between us and him had never happened. Adrian quickly responded, recalling the decisive match against the Three Kings, but Vale interrupted with an even more obvious truth. The decisive duel was between him and the Swordmaster. Hearing this, the boy's face darkened, a flash of realization crossing his mind. So I guess I've won then. He stepped forward with a confident demeanor, his voice echoing through the space. I will keep my promise from back then. In contrast to that atmosphere, Adrian still only showed a confused and puzzled face. Without warning, Vale solemnly placed his hand on his chest, as if declaring with all his honor. Queen Vale declared, as the Queen of the Kingdom and commander of the Third Army, I officially support the Crown Prince Adrian Leonberger of the Kingdom. Faced with that affirmation, he still couldn't fully grasp what was happening and couldn't help but feel confused, wondering what it all meant. Then a flash of light suddenly crossed Adrian's mind, leaving him so stunned he almost gaped. Could it be? As the pieces of memory about his father's promise came back, He could only laugh and cry at the cruel irony that he had never said he wanted to be king first. As soon as he returned to the palace, Idrian immediately felt the aftershock from his plea and couldn't help but silently assess that his uncle's declaration was truly like a bomb exploding throughout the palace, with cheers and congratulations ringing out everywhere. Your Highness, congratulations on this day. Sincerely, congratulations. This is truly a joy for the kingdom. Watching the lively scene outside, he could only silently shake his head in frustration. The palace knights and soldiers newly assigned to cause chaos, along with the eunuchs and servants just sent from the palace, were bustling about. And suddenly I was thrown into the middle of everything. Unable to say more, Idrian snapped angrily, pointing at the chaotic window. This is so annoying. Get rid of them all now. Chaos stands beside him, showing a helpless expression in the face of his master's fury. They are those sent by the royal family, and even if ordered to leave, they won't listen. Still not satisfied with this troublesome reality, he sternly ordered, so at least send them somewhere else out of sight. The noise died down. Hearing that, I.M. turned quietly and subtly signaled to the servant. A little while later, after the noisy crowd had been dispersed, the silence gradually returned to the palace. Idrian then leaned back comfortably in his chair, letting out a soft sigh of relief, feeling much calmer now. At that moment, the back door was suddenly thrown open violently. Gillian stormed in, shouting, "Is the boss here?" Given the uninvited appearance now, all you can do is furrow your brow and stay still. What are you trying to do? Gillian seems to be boiling with anger at this moment, almost full of blame. Huyen is pretending skillfully, secretly learning swordsmanship from the Count, and even revealing such a big secret. Faced with that accusation, Idrian remained strangely calm and composed. Who learned swordsmanship from whom? That dismissive attitude only added fuel to the fire and made him so angry he lost his voice. If I really want to keep the dignity of the big brother, why is Huyen acting like this? I've tried my best not to let Huyen feel ashamed. Hearing that, you just lightly rest your chin and sarcastically say something that cuts deep, about to move you to tears. Gillian's face darkened at that inappropriate attitude, and he loudly threatened, "Big brother, Huyen is making a serious mistake. I will make Huyen pay a heavy price for the lies." Meanwhile, Idrian only feels tired, gently holding his head and quietly thinking. Everyone's the same. I already said I don't care about the throne. I need to confront the one who caused this first. I speak softly, honestly sharing my view with Val. So, Uncle, for now, I will cooperate with you. But please withdraw at the right time. I'm not interested in the throne. How can you act so impulsively without discussing it first? Before I could even finish speaking, Vale abruptly interrupted with a question, worried about Valhart A. That question made Idrian pause briefly, a serious thought crossing his mind. Valhart is the shield protecting the kingdom from the monsters in the northern mountains. He maintained a calm, steady tone, slowly speaking, reminding that neither the royal family nor the common folk forget the harsh winter decree, and Valhart's house will never fall. Idrian merely nodded slightly in acknowledgement, thinking that was for the best, but Vale was still not willing to stop, continuing to delve into reality. It's just a matter of time. This will happen sooner or later. Don't you know the fate of those who forget their origins? Even if you retreat, nothing will change. If you need time to accept it, I will give you as long as you want, but remember this, the rights and duties of the heir will not disappear unless you die. Alone in the silent space, Idrian softly whispered to himself, stubbornly saying that no matter how much time passes, I won't change. Deep down, I remain steadfast in my long-held ideals. What I truly seek is the power and strength I once reached at a transcendent level. So don't expect me to fight for that meaningless throne. Idrian then quietly reaffirmed his own beliefs. I used to think like that. The palace door suddenly swung open loudly, accompanied by a resounding cry throughout the hall, the pure bloodline of the Leonberger kingdom. The head of the Leonberger royal family, born to welcome the first prince, His Highness Idrian Leonberger. Below in the hall, the eyes immediately fixated on him, each with a different expression. Those complicated gazes kept piercing straight at Idrian without hesitation. From above, Idrian silently thought to himself with an oddly calm demeanor. At least until the banquet began. Idrian gently leans his hand on the staircase railing and slowly descends with a calm demeanor. His composed figure immediately draws all eyes upon his appearance. Those who intended to act had already been waiting. Now they are even more eager to praise. It's truly unbelievable. His calm and composed appearance still looks like a king who is about to burst. Hearing those empty, flattering words, Idrian only secretly despised them. Is it because I gained a little weight that they make such a fuss? He irritably turned his face away, glancing over the fake faces that made him nauseous. and wondered if this is what they call the nobility of the kingdom. Through his sharp eyes, Idrian saw through the malicious heart of the person before him and secretly despised them. It was truly ridiculous. They are the marks of crimes committed by those who steal lives, and unexpectedly all of them carry this filth. You then continued to think that among the crowd there was only one person worth watching, despite the continuous whispers of praise ringing in your ears. The prince had grown up and still exuded such commanding presence. Idrian completely ignored and turned his gaze toward the corner of the hall. He casually raised his hand in greeting. If Taylor had already arrived, why not come over to greet me directly, especially when I was unexpectedly called out among the crowd? Taylor couldn't help but be surprised and exclaimed, "Your Highness!" He nervously scratched his head and awkwardly explained, "God, I only wanted to thank you for your kind words." Seeing such rare sincerity, I was a bit moved and quietly reevaluated. Those who are not talented but still retain their conscience. Yes, that's enough to be the vessels for the seeds of life I will sow from now on. Amid the lively atmosphere of the banquet, the sudden announcement of a knight drew attention, officially recognized by the Bougonnu Empire from the Marquis of Montpellier, Coulis, the envoy of Bougonnu, as Prince Montpellier of Bougonnu was approaching. Hearing that name, Idrian immediately straightened up. "What?" Immediately, a man entered amidst the respectful bows of the nobles. Coulis smirked, full of arrogance. The man then nonchalantly approached with a smug expression. "Long time no see, Prince." Seeing the person in front of him, you couldn't hide your intense hatred. In Idrian's heart, a fierce flame of hatred blazed up. Bougonnu, the enemy my friend and I had to face 400 years ago, his gaze filled with uncontrollable murderous intent. Idrian then secretly cursed in his heart with irritation. He had left countless scars on this land. After all, he dared, and today he appears right before my eyes. As his rage threatened to spiral out of control, a glass of wine suddenly spilled all over him, and Idrian froze, the coldness of the liquid helping him regain consciousness amid his feverish hatred. Lord Howe quickly apologized with a remorseful expression. "Your Highness, I was in a hurry to greet you, so I came immediately." He immediately lowered himself in a respectful bow, apologizing to Your Highness. Idrian slightly furrowed his brow, a hint of affection as he realized the benefit of this incident. Seeing the matter unfold, both Coulion and the noble crowd were momentarily stunned. The atmosphere in the grand hall suddenly froze like ice. He frowned and then turned around sharply, saying, "I need to change my clothes." Meanwhile, Bilifu still bowed his head in self-blame. This old body disobedient, causing me to make a serious mistake. Ken quickly stepped forward with a handkerchief, offering to help. "Your Highness, I am here to escort you." But Idrian did not answer, only asked back with curiosity, "Who is he?" Hearing that, he calmly introduced himself with proper dignity as Lord Bilifu. He gently wiped the wine stain with a handkerchief, then sighed softly, realizing that not everything about Bilifu was rotten, which helped clear my mind as well. In the quiet darkness of the room, Idrian sat silently pondering. Suddenly, the door faded away, and Valet appeared with a report saying, "I heard something happened." He showed a thoughtful expression, slightly frowning as he looked at the person in front of him. Valet then slowly approached and made a subtly suggestive remark. "Captain Bilifu said that people like him are probably about to cause trouble. Turns out he's not just talking nonsense." He sat down in the chair opposite and continued questioning. "So what exactly are you planning to do?" Widrian's attitude gradually choked with a bitter, clear disdain as that evil Bergener family flaunted their power in the heart of the kingdom, while the nobles pretended to respect him more than the royal family. The atmosphere was too tense to call it peace, and this dependency meant they could not truly be allies. Idrian was furious and almost shouted in frustration. How could the country be so treacherous and reckless? Valet lowered his voice, his words carrying some unspoken feelings but nothing special. In the past, our kingdom fiercely resisted numerous invasions from the Empire, with outstanding knights rising up to push back the enemy forces. But as time passed, the Empire grew stronger, and the distance between us widened. In front of a super-powerful empire, our kingdom has no choice but to kneel. But remembering something important, Idrian was secretly moved inside, hoping it's not because of that thing. He then gradually sank into his own thoughts, even though they were just a small kingdom on the continent of destruction. But the kingdom once had something that helped them stand against the mighty empire. Since the founding of the nation, achievements have been continuously accumulated, ranging from the ordinary to the extraordinary, sometimes becoming legends, sometimes becoming myths, and even divine tales. A great idea suddenly illuminated in Idrian's mind, the heroic epic, the power of his hands to sense the spiritual energy, and he bitterly sighed inwardly. "We have lost everything." Then Idrian suddenly spoke up, breaking the peaceful atmosphere. "Sir, I have changed my mind." The words from someone made Valet tremble with shock, asking back in confusion, "What do you mean?" With a determined attitude, he placed his hand on his chest and firmly declared, "I will try to become king." Surprise immediately appeared on his face. Meanwhile, Idrian just slightly curled his lips into a smug smile, thinking to himself, "Maybe I will regret this decision. But it's something I have to do. After all, I helped build this half of the country." On the second day of the feast under the clear and ethereal palace sky, he appeared with a solemn demeanor, exuding calm authority. Following Idrian's steps was the resounding cheer of the guards, as Crown Prince Idrian Leonberger entered, accompanied by the herald from the northern Ballo region. As soon as he entered the hall, he subtly glanced around, and the contemptuous, disdainful look at the pathetic beings reluctantly bowing immediately caught his eye. His face hardened in the face of the corruption of reality. At that moment, fragments of past memories suddenly flooded his mind. Back when my friend stood before the crowd, no one thought he would become king. Because he's just a rustic kid from a remote village. Even among those who lost everything and were driven out, he has nothing special. Following the footsteps of Leon Berger in that distant memory, Idrian took a deep breath and told himself that the young man had stepped forward in front of everyone. As the aura of magic began to ripple and envelop his body, he silently affirmed that he was just like now. Immediately, he summoned all his strength, his powerful voice echoing out, awakening those with eyes but no sight. A brilliant burst of light erupted, spreading and enveloping the entire arena. Idrian continued to raise his voice, each word carrying regal dominance, as the mechanical voice of the system echoed alongside, proclaiming, "I stand proud. I sing the anthem of the monarch." My current power cannot match the level of the battle hymn. Part of the song has been omitted, and part of the war has been omitted. He can only sing a quarter of our battle hymn. Idrian, uncomfortable, tightly embraces the trembling figure from the pain, but his mind remains sharp. Compared to the apocalyptic battle song, it's not unbearable, but no other war chant fits the current situation better than this one. Immediately after, he suddenly opened his eyes wide, his piercing gaze penetrating through space. This is enough now. Suddenly, a brilliant blue spiritual energy transformed into a crown and a royal robe draping over Idrian's shoulders. The shimmering garment fluttered in the air amidst the street. The guests watching the scene couldn't help but be amazed. In the face of this presence, the noble aristocrats, who were originally proud, all bowed their heads simultaneously. Seeing this scene, Idrian faintly smirked arrogantly and then coldly declared that they could lift their heads up. However, before the words could finish, he suddenly entered a state of extreme alert. A strange energy sneaks in and awakens Idrian's senses, causing him to be secretly shocked. This energy. A mysterious stranger's figure gradually approaches, causing a noble to exclaim. An elf. The other person gently lowers the brim of their hat, letting out a lazy sigh with a mysterious deep tone. Surprisingly, I didn't expect anyone still remembers the ballad. The moment Idrian saw that person, he was terrified and widened his eyes. No, that is not just an elf. When recognizing Sigrun, his mind exploded in surprise. That woman is. Idrian's entire body tensed up in a defensive stance, sharpening his senses with heightened vigilance. Why is that crazy woman here?